Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Salatu salam ala ashraf al-mursaleen, Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Brothers and sisters, I'm really extremely happy to see all of you today attending this reflection on Surah Yusuf, or the chapter of Joseph. And I would like at the outset to thank very much IslamicCourses.com for the enormous effort they did in terms of organizing, in terms of processing the course pack. We all went through a lot of effort to get this done, and we hope that at the end of the day Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts this as a sincere work. And I would hope that you will have an interesting experience reflecting on Surah Yusuf. What is challenging about Surah Yusuf is that it's quite a big story, it's quite a complicated story. The twists in the narrative are a lot, and that is quite challenging. What is even more challenging is to go bit by bit or verse by verse and try to reflect on it. That's quite impossible. And from the outset, this is not my intention. So my approach to Surah Yusuf is going to be thematic. It's not going to be tafsir. It's not going to be interpretation. I believe that this is available perhaps in books, in internet sites, professors that I'm not going to compete with in theology and religious studies. I'm not here to educate you about Surah Yusuf. My approach is going to be thematic. The reason, of course, if I dwell into the verse-by-verse approach, the reason in which it will be impossible is that when I was actually researching for the topic, I went to all the good bookshops in Britain and in Kuwait, and I found a fascinating book. So I would go to a bookshop in Kuwait, for example. I say, give me any book on the Surah of Yusuf. And they will give me small booklets, small books, 100 pages. And of course, there are many scholars who spoke about it audio-wise, program, TV, satellite, etc. But I was amazed to realize that only a couple of years ago, two scholars wrote a 2 massive volumes book on Surah Yusuf, which is called, even the name is, to me, I was overwhelmed, 1,000 lessons from Surah Yusuf. 1,000 lessons. So in the last couple of weeks, I was reading about 1,000 pages, speed reading, of course. I'm not a genius in finishing 1,000, but going through it very quickly, making sure that I would be able to select these lessons that are relevant to us in the West and formulate them into certain coherent themes. So perhaps what I'm telling you today is the result of some sort of reflection, discussion with many people, but it's only perhaps 10% of what I've read in terms of references, particularly these 2 volumes book. And that's why I say this in every course. I say that I am the first beneficiary of these courses. You know, sometimes how it works with me psychologically is that I become interested in a subject. I know that I will be lazy reading about it, so I need an incentive. So I send an email to IslamicCourses.com and say, let's do a course about it, so that the course becomes my incentive to go and research it. So it's an interest-based course, actually. It fulfills my interest. And of course, with it, you come into the picture. But I feel that I would not be able to do a good job until I am myself absorbed into the subject, taken, excited by the subject, and of course feel that there is something that I can offer you. So I do feel that Yusuf does offer us something, and I hope that you will find it useful. My real challenge on a personal level is to be able to articulate and communicate the sort of concerns that I have, the sort of reflections and readings that I've received from reading about Surah Yusuf. So if it comes by the blessing of Allah, has nothing to do with my personal power, and it comes perhaps because of your patience and desire and excitement to come and listen to me. So in dealing with Surah Yusuf, I'm going to divide it into 4 themes that I feel are important. The first theme in which I will be looking at is the household, because the surah, the narrative of the story begins, if we were talking in terms of media or cameras, the camera of the narrator is focused and fixated in the house. So immediately we encounter a conversation between a son and a father in the household. So the home, the house, the parents, the family is an important context in which we begin to understand the following episodes or the following developments in the narrative. So the first theme will be about the household. Now the household to me is not the kitchen and the toilets and the bathroom and the bedrooms and the living, no. The household to me represents and symbolizes family. So from that point we can then begin to talk about the importance of family. for you then to appreciate the personality of Yusuf. You see, Yusuf was not an orphan. Yusuf was not someone who was born and brought up and he became religious at the age of 20 when he joined an Islamic society at a university. No, he comes from a very well-nurtured household, very caring and warm and caring parents. So the household is important. That's the first theme, and that's the first lecture. The second theme is the palace. The palace to me represents not just his encounter with the women in terms of sexual desires and alluring and seduction. The palace to me represents all sorts of worldly temptations. And the palace could be the street, could be the market, could be the internet, could be the satellites, could be the university campus, halls of residence. The palace to me represents any location or space that has temptations within it. So Yusuf is actually getting out of the household and is now fixated or located in the palace. So that's another theme. The third theme has to do with the prison. So Yusuf now is taken to the prison, which is a totally different environment from either the household or the palace. I'm going to understand his presence in prison in terms of him interacting with non-Muslims. Yes, they were criminals perhaps in prison, some of them perhaps were innocent, but at the end of the day they were perhaps the lowest classes of society, yet he interacted with them positively in terms of providing services. I look at his attempt to interpret the dreams of the two young boys that he met in prison as a way of providing services to non-Muslims, something that the Muslims in the West should realize and benefit from. The fourth theme, the fourth lecture, I called it reunion, in which after all these years of absence and the breakdown of the family as if it were, we go back to the household, we go back to the family. So Yusuf brings back his family, he brings back his brothers, he reconciles, he patches up relations, and he reunites again with the family. Which again, the story concludes again with the family, as if the surah is always trying to emphasize the role of the family and the importance of the family. These are the four themes. The final fifth theme, I called it Yusuf, the making of the character. What is it? What were the elements that made the character of Yusuf? I want to understand this person. What sort of elements, what constituted his character? To what extent did the parent play a part? To what extent did the environment play a part? To what extent did his prophethood play a part? Wisdom, knowledge, all these elements. And the reason, the logic behind this is then for you to be able to benefit from the character. Because there is no point of me speaking about someone who we sit here glorifying because he was a great prophet and you are normal human beings and there is no way that you can be like him. No, that's not the logic. That's not where I'm coming from. I'm coming from the approach or the angle of trying to de-emphasize his prophethood and overemphasize his humanity to make him relevant to us humans. So the final fifth theme is Yusuf, the making of the character. So let's now begin with the first theme. The first theme is the household. And I'm going to divide this into two parts. The first part in which I will make you appreciate the context first of Surah Yusuf, and in which context was it revealed. And then we will zoom the camera into the household, entering into this conversation between Yusuf and his father. So the main focus of lecture 1 is to set the scene with regards to Surah Yusuf in terms of the context of its revelation, and more importantly is to discuss the role of the household and the family relations. And at the end of the lecture there are some concluding remarks that sum up the main points that I have mentioned. Okay, the context of the surah. The surah was revealed in its entirety, and this is a rarity in the Quran. So a lot of the surahs were revealed in parts and in pieces, except the surah of Yusuf was revealed in its entirety. So over 100 verses were revealed in its entirety, because the tone of the narrative does not afford you ripping it into pieces. So a conversation between a father and a son has to be completed, and we need to see what happened next. This urgency in the tone of the surah is there, and that is only compatible with it being revealed in its entirety. So it was revealed in its entirety. Where was it revealed? It was revealed in Mecca. So it was the entire logic of it, the entire environment of it, is that the Prophet is in Mecca. There is no Muslim community established, institutionalized Muslim community. He didn't go to Medina yet. So it's really, a lot of the environment of the surah is relevant and applicable to the situation of Muslims, perhaps in the West or in the East or wherever. It was also revealed where the Muslims were in exile, in Abyssinia, in Al-Habasha. So even Muslims who were not living in their homeland were aware of Surah Yusuf and were aware that a great surah was revealed. The surah was revealed soon after the passing away of the wife of Prophet Muhammad, Khadija, and his uncle Abu Talib. And both, you have to understand, were great supportive pillars for Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So much so that the same year in which both died in was called Am al-Huzn, or the year of sorrow and sadness. Actually, Yusuf as a name, of course it's Joseph, but Yusuf, even the letters are really compatible with the context of sadness. Because even in Arabic, when you say Ya Asafa or Asif, or I apologize, or Ya Asafa, you know, what a worry, what a pain, what a pity. The alif and the sin and the fa are so calm, so soothing, so comforting, so compatible with the context. Unlike surahs that talks about hellfire, Al-Haqqa, Mal-Haqqa, wa ma adraka Al-Qari'ah. The Qaf and the Kaf are so powerful letters. And if you are interested in the language, even in the letters, there isn't a lot of Qaf and Ha and Qaf and Kaf in Yusuf. There is all Sin and F and Ya, which means that in a context of sorrow, you need to comfort. And this is exactly what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was doing with the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was revealing verses to comfort him, because it wasn't compatible to reveal another verse. Maybe in Medina, then Al-Baqarah and Al-Ma'idah and Al-Imran and the rest of it. So this was the context. But of course, with all the revelation of all the surahs, they have a specific reason, but then we take them in their generality. So the general aim of Surah Yusuf is comfort, is consolation, and is relief. So it could also be applicable to anyone who lives away from home, who feels depressed, who is lonely, even if he is living in his own society, at his own home, with his own family. This feeling of loneliness has nothing to do with you being away from your family. Sometimes people do exactly feel lonely because they are living with their family. All sorts of reasons. So when you read Surah Yusuf, you find that there was someone somewhere who lived thousands of years before you who had a common experience with you. Is it jealousy? He experienced it. Is it hatred? He encountered it. Is it seduction and temptation? Is it evil? Is it malice? He experienced all that. So it is as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling you, and telling the Prophet also, because the Prophet was humiliated a lot after the death of his wife and the death of his aunt. He was humiliated a lot when he went to At-Ta'if, and the story is known, and came back bleeding and starting making dua and praying to Allah. It is in this context that Surah Yusuf was revealed. And what is fascinating actually, this is something that goes off track a little bit, but maybe we can tie it in very beautifully, is that after the revelation of this surah, and it is within the Am al-Huzn, Isra and Mi'raj happened, where Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam was taken to heaven. And one of the fascinating things is that he saw Yusuf in heaven. It's fascinating that you read about someone, and the following day you see him. So imagine if he sees him first, and then the revelation is revealed. It doesn't make Yusuf, okay, this is Prophet Yusuf. He would not appreciate him. But when he read about Yusuf, when he learned about Yusuf, then when he saw Yusuf, he would say, وَقَدْ أُوتِيَ شَطْرَ الْحُسْنِ. Wow, it's extremely beautiful. Now he can link the reality with the narrative. So all in all, this is the context. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks to us about the surah by saying to us that it's the best of stories. It's أحسن القصص. We relate to you the best of stories through our revelations to you. نحن نقص عليك أحسن القصص بما أوحينا إليك هذا القرآن وإن كنت من قبله لمن الغافلين. We are going to narrate to you, O Muhammad, the best of stories. Okay, what is it that makes the story the best? Actually, the mufassirin or the interpreters have said a lot about it. You know, why did Allah call the surah the best surah? Many reasons. But to me, what gets me excited about the surah is that because I perceive it to be an epic story. I don't want to mention things like Troy and 300 and Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, but really it's an epic story. It has the angels in it. It has the devil in it. It has the animals in it, the wolves and the cow. It has all sorts of people, different social backgrounds, criminals, poor people, rich people, wealthy people, common people, women, men, good, bad, political elites, all sorts of people with different social backgrounds. So it's like reading a psychology text about how do people behave. And do not expect that because you are the son of the Prophet, you are an angel. Because that father, Yaqub, Jacob, had sons. Some of them were thinking in evil terms, and Yusuf was thinking in good. So the same household could breed bad people. The same household could breed good people. You could be twins, and one of the sisters is practicing and the other is not. It doesn't say much necessarily about the household, because there are other complications. There is the environment, there is the school, there is the peer group, there is you, the genetic makeup of you, and the receptivity of you. So it's a fascinating psychological journey into the lives of people, and the lives of people who come from different social backgrounds. In this surah, and this is why I also think it's the best of stories, is that you see people reacting in different situations, different emotions. You see people dreaming. You see people awake. You see people happy. You see people enjoy. You see people crying in tears until they get blind. You see people in jealousy and in deception. You see people changing, turning points. You see people repenting. You see people who are free. You see people who are slaves. You see people who are outside, and you see people who are in prison. You see people who are in love, and you see people who are in love and are willing to commit adultery and an affair, despite the fact that they are married. You see all sorts of people. Actually, what it creates in the mind of the Prophet and in the minds of a Muslim, a very sophisticated mind, not a naive spiritual person who does not understand the complications of this world. It makes us feel that not only because you are bearded or wearing hijab, that you are an angel walking on earth. You could be the wife of the biggest personality in this country, and you could be having an affair with a slave. You could be a brother of a prophet and think about nothing but killing your other own brother. This is the sophistication. This is the complication in which the Quran tries to introduce. And bear in mind that this is at the first stage, the early stages of the Meccan period in the life of the Prophet. So imagine what sort of mind is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creating in the mind of the Prophet, in the mind of the companions, in the mind of the companions who are in exile in Habasha, and in the minds of the companions who will later go and establish the Islamic State in Medina. In it, there are other things to do with mechanisms, arts, skills and talents. So we are introduced to the arts of upbringing, how to upbring children. We are introduced to the art of da'wah. How do we introduce Islam to the non-Muslims? We are introduced to political and economic management, how to manage state affairs, how to organize economic relations and situations at a time of famine or at a time of abundancy. So that's to me why Surah Yusuf is Ahsan al-Qasas. Another thing that makes Surah Yusuf Ahsan al-Qasas as well, the best of stories, is that because really, honestly, seriously, it has a happy ending. And when I say a happy ending, you say, well, all movies have happy endings. Yes, but look at the movies. What's the happy ending? The hero kills the villains and marries the princess. That's the happy ending. Here, the happy ending is that everyone was happy, even the villains. Because the villains, by the end of the story, ceased to be villains. They changed. They repented. The women that seduced him changed. The brothers that wanted one day to kill him grew up, matured, and changed and repented. So much so that they became, as some of us say, prophets. They were chosen to be prophets. And that's why the 12 sons of Israel, who is Yaqub, became the prophets to the house of Israel. They changed. Everyone changed. There were no villains. And not necessarily Yusuf got married to the princess, the woman who seduced him. Although some of us say that this happened. It doesn't have to happen. Not all love relations have to end up in marriage. I'm not saying have a love affair. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that not all emotions need to necessarily translate into institutional relationships based on marriage. There is compatibility and there are other things that someone has to bear in mind. So all at the end of the day was happy. Yusuf was released from prison. Yaqub could see again. And the family, to me that's the best happiness. The family reunited again. The brothers said to Yusuf, we are sorry, we apologize, we didn't mean it. By Allah, Allah has favored you upon us. And he said, I forgive you, forget about it. Let's begin a new life now. This is what is fascinating about Surah Yusuf. And of course, the surah concludes in such a way as to tell you that the real happiness, I'm reading these days self-help books to learn about certain ideas, and all of them emphasize on the need for spirituality. The West now is fed up with this consumer culture, material culture. It was applicable during the Industrial Revolution. It was applicable when they wanted to get away from the power of the church. And they have tried it now, being away from the church for the last 200 years. What has happened? What has happened? People are living a miserable life. I don't want to generalize. I'm sure that there are people who are living the most happy life. But as a trend, as a pattern, those writers are always saying that we need a form of spirituality. Of course, what form of spirituality? They don't touch that. You know, here they say, okay, it's up to you. Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, voluntary work, doing something that you feel that makes you a human being, doing services for the community. They don't say Islam necessarily, but that's not the point. The point is that at least they are recognizing the importance of spirituality. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the end of the surah shows us that the real happiness was when everyone reconnected back with Allah. Actually, the chapter ends with a dua that Yusuf makes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He withdraws himself from all the family, from all the power, from all the attractions of this dunya, and connects with Allah and say, oh Allah, when I die, accept me as a Muslim. That's all what he wants. After all this busy life that he went through, he doesn't want anything now but to die as a Muslim. So let's zoom now into the household. Let's now trace and track the conversation, what happens in the household. And as I said, I cannot go through the verse one by one. This is going to be exhausting for me and also for you. So I'm going to focus on certain verses. And of course, if you are interested, you can go home and read the verses in their entirety, the surah in its entirety. So Yusuf said to his father, "O my father, I saw 11 stars and the sun and the moon. I saw them prostrating for me." He said, "O my son, relate not your dream to your brothers, that they will arrange a plot against you. Verily, Shaitan is a clear enemy of man, and thus your Lord will choose you and teach you the interpretations of dream and perfect his favor on you and on the offspring of Yaqub, as he perfected it before on your fathers Ibrahim and Ishaq. Verily, your Lord is all-knowing, all-wise." A very brief conversation between a son who was perhaps at the age of 11 or 12, not even a teenager, and between a father. A father that was quite old, was quite senior in age. So immediately we have a generational gap. But yet we do have a conversation that is of an intimate nature. What does this tell you? It tells you that there is a strong bond between the son and the father. And this is exactly one of the most important points that I want to highlight. And that is to what extent do sons and daughters of today in the techno world have a connection with their fathers and their mothers. Your father and your mother might not know a lot about iPods and computers and internets. Yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses to symbolize their importance and significance with the sun and the moon. Because that is exactly what Yusuf saw. He saw the sun and the moon prostrating to him. So it is as if Allah saying to you that the sun and the moon, you can't live without them. Your parents, you can't live without them. You cannot afford to upset the sun and the moon. You cannot afford to upset your parents. Now the Mufassirin disagree as who was the sun and who was the moon. SubhanAllah, the Mufassirin didn't leave anything. Who was the sun and who was, I don't know how do we know this, but and who was the mother and who was the father. Some said that the father was the sun. Others said no, the father was the moon. Those who say, this is for the sisters' happiness, I will make you happy in a minute, that the mother was the sun, because the sun provides warmth, care, beauty, embracing. Hello, my son, how are you? I'll make you happy now. No. The sun is the father. He provides light, guidance, supervision, all the rest of it. Okay, I'm not sure how the moon will relate to either mothers or fathers. But yeah, there are those who said that the father is either the moon, or the mother is either the moon. But I'll just talk about the sun. But all in all, we are at the outset introduced to the importance of the parents. But we are also introduced to a conversation taking place between a son and a father, and a conversation of an intimate nature. He's going, telling his father. He's not telling a friend. He's not picking up the mobile and calling his buddy. He's not going in an internet chat room and emailing someone about a dream that he saw, or an anxiety that he encounters. No, he's going straight away to his father and talking to him about a dream. But there is something else other than the love in the relationship between the son and the father, and that is trust. You see, Yusuf is going to communicate a dream to his father because he knows that his father is a prophet. And he knows that his father is able to interpret dreams. And in general terms, he knows that his father is able, therefore, to address his concern and give him a solution to his problem. And this is exactly an advice to parents, that you should always, in addition to love, which is important, sweets and gifts and how are you, my son, and everything, the kisses, but on a more intellectual level, you should always try to win the trust of your sons and daughters. And the way to do that is to be able to adapt, which is difficult, I know, but this is a challenge, which is able to adapt to the changes that generations are going through. And yes, you might have been born in the 50s and the 60s, and at that time there were no iPods and mobiles and internet. But there are courses, night courses, part-time courses. There are all sorts of things that teaches you even how to send an email. This is important, I think, so that you are aware, not necessarily spying on your son and daughter and going to the bedrooms and being shocked at what they see. That's not the point. But at least to be able to understand the common vocab that they use to communicate. I'm a professor of history, and when I mark essays, I am shocked, because all what I read in essays are text messaging languages. So, you lived. They don't say why or you, it's you. It's the text messaging vocab. I know that, and of course I cross it and I deduce marks because I want them to learn the proper writing. Because think about how English will be after 1,000 years if we enter into this text vocab. And people have already written about the erosion of the English language because of technology. But the parents as well have to be able to understand what the U starts for him then to understand what more dangerous symbols stand for. So the important thing in the family relationship here is love and is trust. And look at the advice now that Yaqub gives. First of all, he tells him not to narrate this story, this dream to your brothers. He understood that this dream is unique. This dream is about Yusuf becoming a potential prophet. Because it was so specific. I saw 11 stars, sun and the moon prostrating to me. This is a 12-year-old boy speaking. How on earth can a sun prostrate? Imagine, we prostrate like this. How can a circle thing prostrate? Prostrate this side, this side, this side, this side? I don't know, but he knew. You see, he didn't tell him, I saw the sun and the moon doing funny things. He said, I saw 11 stars, and he's very numerically specific. They were not 12 or 10. And number two, I saw the sun and the moon prostrating. And then the father understood that this person is unique. And his love was even, for him, was even endorsed more and more. And he said to him, do not narrate this dream to your brothers. But you see what is amazing, what is interesting, is that he did not create, the father that is, and this is the role of the parents. He did not create a hatred relationship between Yusuf and his brothers by saying, do not narrate this story to your brothers. Your brothers are evil. They will kill you one day if you tell them this. No. He channeled the energy of hatred, if any, to a common enemy, and that is shaitan. The problem, O Yusuf, I'm not telling you not to narrate the story to you or the dream to your brothers because they are evil. No, the problem, Yusuf, is not the brothers. The problem is shaitan. And what is fascinating in this advice is that the father is going away from the specificity of the problem into giving a general solution to all sorts of problems that you will encounter in the real world. Because when you, Yusuf, are in the well, it's not your brothers that you will encounter because they will be away from you. It's the darkness, it's the evil, it's the shaitan. Or Yusuf, when you are in the palace, the brothers are in Palestine and you are in Egypt. But there will be a woman there, tempting you. She will not be jealous. This jealousy of your brothers has ended. It's now sexual invitation, it's love, but shaitan is always there. When you are in the prison with criminals because you were accused unjustly of committing an affair with this woman, the problem is not this woman or the brothers, it's the shaitan. So parents need to equip their sons and daughters with the lens, with the paradigm, with the framework, the real one, the abstract, the general one, the applicable one, that will be then usable throughout life, even when he gets married, when he has children, and when he passes away. So the parent did not immerse himself into the specificity of the situation, but spoke in general terms. And the third thing in the verse, in which he says, and Allah selects you in the same way that He selected and chose your father and your grandfather, Yaqub. Of course, Yusuf is the son of Yaqub. Yaqub is the son of Isaac or Ishaq. Ishaq is the son of Abraham or Ibrahim. What is the father doing here? He's actually creating a strong, well-rooted identity. Yusuf, you belong to a noble family. You should act nobly. This is important because the son now will go outside the household. He will interact with children. He will interact with schoolboys. He will see satellite TV channels. He will look at magazines. He will see all sorts of ideas. And what will he encounter? An identity crisis. Who am I? Am I a Muslim? Am I an Arab? Am I British? Am I black? Am I white? Am I male? Am I homosexual? What's the difference between my gender and my sexuality? Are they the same thing or are they different? I am confused. But from the outset, he's telling Yusuf, no, don't get it wrong. You are a potential prophet. Your father is a prophet. Your grandfather is a prophet. And your grandfather is a prophet. So you know where you are coming from. Have roots and have pride in your past. And have pride in your family lineage. How is this relevant to us in the West? Simply put, you are representative of Muhammad ﷺ in the West. And that's it. As simple as that. Yes, you are not the son of Muhammad. Your grandfather is not Muhammad unless you are a Sayyid or a Hashemite. But at least being a Muslim, you are connected to Rasul ﷺ at least more than Abu Lahab, who is connected lineage-wise to a Prophet Muhammad. He is not connected with him at the Day of Judgment. So Rasul ﷺ will be pleased and happy with you when he sees that you represented a good, fair, balanced, moderate Muslim character in the West. Because that's how he was. And you are representing him in the West. So that's how we can correlate this to the advice that Yaqub mentioned. Are you fed up? Shall we continue? Are you willing to take this struggle? It's a big journey. This is only the few verses. I told you 1,000 lessons. So we have done 500 now. Let's move on into another scene. So the curtain closes on the father and the son speaking, and another curtain opens. And now we have scheming, plotting brothers. 10 sitting in secret and plotting. Verily in Yusuf and his brethren there were signs for the inquirers. When they said, surely Yusuf and his brother are loved more by our father than we, and we are a party. Really our father is in plain error. Kill Yusuf or cast him out to some land so that the favor of your father might be given to you alone. And after that, you will be righteous folk. One of them said, don't kill Yusuf, but if you must do something, then throw him down to the bottom of a well, that he will be picked up by some caravan of travelers. You know, to me, this is a very negative way of thinking. This is very negative. I mean, forget now about moral or immoral. Let's talk about it from a logical point of view. It's negative. It's destructive. You know why? Because those brothers are always thinking of the other. They are not thinking about their role, their sense of responsibility. They could have said, and look, subhanAllah, they are 10 minds, 10 brains. But they are, throughout the story, like sheep. They are always moving as a united block in evil. Which, if anything, shows that not necessarily numbers means something. Especially if all are thinking in the same, through the same paradigm. It's destructive and negative, you know why? Because they are always thinking about the other. Okay, they have a problem. The problem is that our father do not love us as he loves Yusuf. So kill Yusuf, get rid of Yusuf. But this is a very negative way of thinking of it. A more positive way would be, why does our father love Yusuf? What is it in Yusuf that makes him beloved by our father? Because certainly and surely these type of characters and traits in Yusuf are not in us. So can we actually develop them to be beloved like Yusuf? And actually this way of thinking is in many Muslim minds. You know, okay, I have problems with George Bush, go and kill. I have problem with, Palestine is an unsolved problem. Go and assassinate. I have a problem with the Prime Minister of Britain. Go and bomb Glasgow airport. Why? Inshallah, because if we bomb it, inshallah, British policies towards the Muslims will improve. Well, the contrary has happened. Here they thought that by killing Yusuf, by getting him away from the sight of his father, you see how they understood it, that love is a visual relationship. That if I see you on a daily basis, I will fall in love with you. So if I take you out of the picture and bring my face, my beautiful face, into the picture, you will fall in love with me. It doesn't work like that. Because Yaqub for 40 years continued to remember Yusuf, so much so that he lost his sight after 40 years. He did not, interestingly, lose his sight immediately after Yusuf was absent. He lost it after 4 years. What does that mean? It means that the love of Yusuf did not decrease, did not even continue as it was. It in fact exponentially increased, despite the absence. So they got it wrong. And Muslims in the West have to cease to get it wrong. You should not continue to act like the brothers of Yusuf. I got overexcited, sorry. Let's go back. So that's a negative way of looking at it. But nonetheless, they were thinking in these terms. And not only were they negative in the way in which they were thinking, but this negative way of thinking led them to what I call sequential sins. Impregnated sins. A sin that has a sin within it, and a sin that has another sin within it. It's not as easy as killing Yusuf. You are going to plan, you are going to plot, you are going to lie, you are going to bring his shirt. With it is a blood of a sheep, saying that he has been eaten by the wolf. So, yeah, changing British policies. I'm going to commit fraud, I'm going to lie, I'm going to buy weapons, I'm going to learn how to do bombs. Sequential sins, sins after sins after sins. And you enter into a total sphere of immorality. And you psychologically begin to justify that. Because the ends justify the means. That Machiavellian way of thinking. That is a dangerous way of thinking. So be constructive, act sensibly and responsibly. They thought that the problem will be solved by removing Yusuf from the sight of the father. And then the curtain shuts, and we are introduced into the third and perhaps the final scene, in which the curtain opens again, and now the brothers are sitting with their father. So the beginning of the chapter was the son, the good son, with the father. Shuts the curtain, open another curtain, a secret conference and a secret meeting. Shuts, the third curtain opens, the brothers are sitting with the father. Of course, there are gaps in the narrative which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not narrate, either because they are logically deductible, or to engage you in the text, in stretching your imagination, in trying to see what could have happened. And this enigma in the Quran is fascinating, because it allows the human mind to think within, of course, given sets of boundaries. So they went to their father and said, "Oh, our father, why don't you trust us with Yusuf, when we are his well-wishers? Send him with us tomorrow to enjoy himself and play, and we will take care of him." He said, "It saddens me that you should take him away, and I fear that the wolf, not you, the wolf, may eat him while you are unaware of him." They said, "If the wolf eats him, and we are a party, then we are of no use." Then when they took him away, and all agreed that he should be put in the dark well, and we revealed to him necessarily, "You shall inform them of this doing while they shall not be knowing." And the verse goes on. I just want to zoom the camera now into this conversation between, again, the brothers and the father, or the sons and the parents, which links in, again, beautifully with the parenting politics, or parenting relationship that I'm talking to you about. Of course, it seems that the brothers have tried many times to persuade the father to allow Yusuf to go with them. And the father would always say no. Because look, the beginning of the conversation is, why is it that you don't trust us with Yusuf? So it doesn't make sense that from the beginning, why don't you trust us with Yusuf, send them with us? No. Maybe that's the third, fourth, fifth time in which he's saying no, 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 no. Then they squeezed their mind in thinking about a better plot. And the plot was as follows. "Oh Yaqub, oh our father, Yusuf is too young. You are too old. You always keep him with you. You always make him live the senior environment of old people. He's quite young. He needs to play. He needs to have recreation. He needs to go at least Saturday, Sunday to the park. So you send him with us, because actually we are going racing. So that should be fun for him. He will eat, he will drink, and he will play. You love him so much, don't you? So wouldn't you like that he is happy and joyful? It makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. And he said, yes, okay, fine, but you take care of him. Well, initially he says, yeah, but I'm worried that the wolf might eat him. You see, he's not worried from the wolf. The father is so miskeen, actually. It's so depressing to perceive enemies within the house. You know, to have enemies outside the house, to have people misbehaving badly outside, in the underground, in work, in school. But to have them misbehaving 24 hours, even when you are asleep in your bedroom, that's hell. It's not just neighbors from hell, even families are from hell sometimes. Yet, he did not bring it up by saying, I fear you. And this is important in the parent-son relationship. Excuse me, when I say son, I also include daughter. But if I do forgive, it's not gender biased or anything. So son and daughter are included. All what I'm interested in is the parent and the children relationship, despite the gender. So he didn't say, I am worried that you might kill him or that you might intend evil with him. I'm worried from the wolf. And this is amazing in the relationship between parents and children, is that parents should always try to show trust in their children. You might know that your child smokes. You might know that the child is involved in drugs or all sorts of evil things. I'm not saying you condone that. But what I'm saying is that your relationship with him should be formulated in such a way so as not to break this kind of trust, which will not solve his problem, but will sever relationships even further. And this is a deep way of looking at it. Because Yaqub or Jacob was a prophet. He was not that naive. He knew that there was a plot. And that's why when they came back with the news, he didn't overreact. It is as if he expected it. But what's of concern to us is how he reacted with the demand. So you can give in to your son's demands, but try not to break the trust between you and them. So you be cautious, that's my point, but not judgmental. Don't judge your sons and your daughters. And by being judgmental, I mean, open your mouth, smell, are you smoking? Checking the bucket of it, going to his bedroom, checking the internet. You don't need to do that, because you need to show him or her that I trust you. And that even if I'm not aware of what you are doing, suffice it to say that Allah is aware, and that's enough. And that's important to be implanted in the children from a young age. You know, I always talk about my daughters, etc., but this is exactly what I do. I always say to my daughter, even if I'm not there, even if your mother is not there, Allah is watching. And this could be served by stories, narrations, etc. It's difficult, because the child might continue to lie because he fears you. You are physically there. Who is Allah? I can't perceive of Allah and Muhammad. It's difficult, I know. But with consistent narration and engagement, and the child will learn, hopefully. And the other point is that he, at the end of the day, agreed to send he could have said, no. And that would have aggravated ill feelings towards Yusuf. So he was aiming at the end of the day to make the brothers happy, to make Yusuf happy, and to lessen the tension and the jealousy between the brothers and Yusuf. And the way he thought he would do that is by allowing Yusuf to go with them. And finally, I'm going to leave you here with Yusuf in the darkness of the well, for us then to appreciate what happened next. So when they took him away, they all agreed to throw him down to the bottom of the well. Now the English translation here for Jub, فَلَمَّا ذَهَبُوا بِهِ وَأَجْمَعُوا أَن يَجْعَلُوهُ فِي غَيَابَةِ الْجُبِّ. Jub is translated here as well. Now in Arabic, there are for well 2 words. I'm not going here to teach you Arabic, but suffice it to say, just because there is a point I want to make, is that well in Arabic could be Jub or could be Bi'r. Bi'r is more common, Bi'r. The Quran does not say Bi'r, it says Jub. You know what's the difference between a Jub and a Bi'r? The Jub is deeper, is a deeper well than a Bi'r. So actually we are talking about a boy who is perhaps 60 meters down. So he's underground, no escalators, no air conditioning. I'm not trying to create fears now in your mind, but really I want you to appreciate the hardship that Yusuf went through because of his brothers, then to be amazed as to why he forgiven them. Because he's a great person, and that's the making of his character. The jub is quite dark, and scholars say, or the mufassirin say, that the jub was dug deep. These jub, by the way, used to be dug, not necessarily because they had water, but on the hope that when the rain comes, it collects a little water. So sometimes the rain comes and sometimes it doesn't. So it's not always full with water. Otherwise, Yusuf would have sunk and died. They say that there was little water to reach perhaps his knees. That's how awkward the situation was. So that's number one. But I want you to bear in mind the entire situation. Imagine it if you would. We are talking about a 12 years old boy. We are talking about him being underground in a jub and not in a bi'r. Now you know the difference. We are talking about him being in darkness, and it's really frightening when you are in the dark. And if you saw Silence of the Lamb, where at the end, maybe this is not appropriate, but let me become crazy a little bit. Judy Foster comes and wants to kill this villain. She is in the dark and she can't see anything, and the villain is able to see her with an infrared binoculars. And it's really very scary. And when I think about Yusuf, it's like that. He can't even see his fingers. He's crying, probably, of course. He's 12 years, he's not a 60 wise man saying, inshallah, Allah will save me. He's a child. So, darkness. And you would also imagine that he was naked or semi-naked because they took the shirt. Did you remember? The shirt actually is fascinating. It plays 3 roles in the chapter. So this is the first time in which we are introduced to the shirt. We will be introduced to the shirt twice in the rest of the narrative. Anyway, the shirt is taken from him, so he's naked. So he's naked, underground, in the cold, in the darkness. No food, no sandwiches, no snacks, no lunchbox, nothing. And they say, this is perhaps the interesting bit, they say that the jub is not properly walled. It doesn't have cement and wall, and it's just digging. So you can imagine he is in this tightness of the jub. What would you imagine coming from the sand? All sorts of insects. There is nothing to prevent them. It's not like in the tube, you don't see a crab in the underground here, for example, or a snake. You might see mice sometimes. I'm sorry. Because some sisters and brothers perhaps have problems with mice. But with Yusuf, you would expect anything and everything. And he was lonely, of course, because take him in contrast now. He was embraced, kissed, beloved. Now he's lonely. Now there is no father. There is nothing. There is no sun and moon. The fascinating thing in all that is that this was his immediate first difficult test. The fascinating thing is that he passed this test successfully. He went out of the well and he was taken as a slave. Did he become paranoid from the darkness and mice? Did he become traumatically destroyed, having nightmares about his experience in the jub? So you can tell from the outset that he was a healthy, strong, brought-up person exactly because of the wisdom that was instilled in his mind through his father. So with regards to the home, number one, the story begins at the home to emphasize the role played by the family in the making of the main player's character, and that's Yusuf. 2, parents' importance is symbolized in them being the sun and the moon in the lives of their children. 3, zooming into the household, we are introduced to a strong relationship between the father and his son. This relationship is based on love, care, trust, and advice. 4, the father, who is also a prophet, is a role model to his son, who shares with him his intimate secrets and sometimes confusions, such as dreams. 5, parents should be aware of their children and their developments at school and as future responsible adults. 6, a deep-rooted sense of identity is essential in the process of bringing up children to avoid a long period and perhaps unresolved crisis identity. 7, parents should aim to be just and avoid promoting feelings of jealousy between brothers. Wives of a single man should not transform ill feelings to the brothers and should always bear in mind that family unity is more lasting, if not more beneficial, than fragmented relations. 8, father and son's relation is also based on care and trust and on not being judgmental. This helps develop a more confident and a more self-esteemed personality. This is the household, and now we shift our brother Yusuf into the palace. Inshallah, at the second lecture. قولوا قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعه بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. Brothers and sisters, I now introduce to you the palace, which is a shift to a new location to Yusuf, which also represents a new experience. The aim of lecture 2, therefore, would be to focus on sexual desires and illicit relations and temptations, and how one is expected to respond to. Although the location of the scene is primarily focused on the palace, it could also symbolize all contexts and situations of temptations that one is exposed to, including the streets, markets, workplaces, university campuses, and modern visual forms of communications and technology. So that's the paradigm in which we are going to introduce this theme. And there came a caravan, they sent their water drawer, and he let down his bucket. He said, "What a good news, here is a boy." So they hid him as a merchandise, and Allah knows what they do. And they sold him for a low price, for a few dirhams, and they were of those who regarded him insignificant. One of the things that is always said about Yusuf is that he was enslaved, and that was another test in which he was introduced to. But yet people in the West, or even modern people who live in the modern times, young people, do not have a true perception of slavery, enslavement. It's something of the past, something that is historical. What I need to do now is to make you actually relive that past, for you to appreciate this test. Because it's not worthwhile saying to you, oh, he was enslaved and then he was humiliated. You need to understand, what did it mean to be a slave in Egypt at his time. First of all, you need to be aware that slavery was a phenomena, a commercial phenomena during these times. So now when you go to the market, there is a market for shirts and clothes, and markets for food and for drinks. There is markets for cattle, cows, sheep, pigs. Back then there were markets for human beings, selling human beings. You wanted a European, you wanted an African, you wanted an Asian, you wanted an Arab. They were there, all were there. You go there, you check them out. If you like them, you buy them. Simple as that. You buy them, they become yours. You beat them up, you kill them, you do all sorts of things. They are yours. They are yours. It is in this context that you have to understand the new identity that Yusuf assumed. I was reading about what they spoke about as the slavery market in Egypt during that time. And it was something like this. It was a massive market. It constituted of a big fence, like a courtyard. This fence would be made of wood or stone. And they would bring the slaves from all over the world, tight in their hands like prisoners in Guantanamo. And they will put them inside this market, they will untie them, and they are free to walk within this territory or within this courtyard. They would separate the girls from the boys, the men from the women. And then people would come with bed, yes, he looks fine, I will take him. The buyers would usually go inside the fence, and as if you are looking at an animal, you will be treated like an animal. They would go, like you check a cattle, you check a goat or you check a sheep. You look into the eyes, you look into the ears, you look into the teeth. You see how young, how old, ill or not ill. A buyer would go inside this fence and will check the boys, if he's interested in boys or girls, and will ask him or her to open the mouth, smell the mouth to see any kind of diseases, look at the teeth, look at the eyes, look at the ears, look at the hair, look at the body, touch all parts and all pieces, like you do with a shirt. You check it out, basically. And you would expect Yusuf to have been exposed to all that. Now, I'm not going now to play with your imaginations. I'm going to leave it to you. But really what I want you to appreciate is the agony, the pain, the humiliation in which he went through. Sit down, stand up, turn around, say, ah. It's like the same humiliation that, for example, Saddam encountered when he was captured by the American forces. Did you see him when they opened his mouth to check his teeth, to check? They were saying we were doing a health check on him. That's exactly what they did with Yusuf. You would expect. Because no one would buy just a human being because of he has green eyes or black, whatever. So he has to check him out. So that's number one. Usually what happens is that beautiful girls or boys are kept at a side from the rest of the human commodities, and these would be booked for wealthy people, political elites, governors, wealthy, rich people. And Yusuf, because of his looks, he was put with that group, and it is that context in which he was bought by the king or the minister of finance, or the exchequer if you want, who bought Yusuf in that context. And usually they would be more expensive than the other boys or girls because of their looks, because you would expect that they are quite good to own, in the same way that you think that this shirt is more beautiful than this shirt. I just wanted you to live this environment. And he from Egypt who bought him said to his wife, make his stay comfortable, maybe he will profit us, or we shall adopt him as a son. And thus we established Yusuf in the land that we might teach him the interpretation of events, and Allah has full power and control over his affairs, but most of men know not. And when he attained his full manhood, we gave him wisdom and knowledge, thus we reward the righteous. And she in whose house he was sought to seduce him, she closed the doors and said, come on, O you. He said, Allah forbid, truly he is my master, he made my stay honorable. Verily, the wrongdoers will never be successful. What is amazing in the story of Yusuf when he was enslaved, open your mouth, sit down, stand up, turn around, is that he was silent. He was not saying, who do you think you are? I am the son of the Prophet. I am Yusuf. I come from Palestine. I'm free. I'm not a slave. He kept quiet. Incidentally, you will notice that Yusuf does not speak a lot in the entire surah, except when he is in prison, which is fascinating, except when he begins to interact with non-Muslims. Amazing. And I will justify that or try to explain it in a minute. So he's silent. And the Mufassirin say that he was silent because he didn't want to go back to Palestine. Because actually going back to Palestine meant that he will go back to his brothers, and his brothers hated him. His brothers orchestrated a plot to kill him. But I would like also to think that there was another reason why he didn't want to go back to Palestine. You see, in comparison between Palestine and Egypt, Egypt was more civilized. Egypt was more urban. Egypt was more modern and progressed in comparison to their time, in contrast to their time. And therefore, we are now thinking about someone who is looking for a new opportunity in the world, a new opportunity in life. He wanted, in addition to escape from the household, which to him, as far as his brothers were concerned, was hell, he was looking for a new experience in life, a new opportunity to gain more experience, to open up, to broaden, to meet different people, new people. So he wasn't, in a sense, homesick and very much attached to his household. And this is, again, part of this healthy character that Yaqub has built and developed. That in so much care that he gave to Yusuf, he also gave him an element of independence, an element of desire and love for exploration and going and experiencing new things in life. And you could say that this is one part or one reason why he kept silent, as if he was saying, I agree. I would like to be in Egypt. And this is also something that you should think about. Those who think of immigrating back to Pakistan, or going and settling in Yemen, or Mauritania, and driving camels, and living in a tent. Fine, you are escaping for all sorts of reasons, and I'm not here to try to persuade you otherwise. But all what I'm saying is that where you are now, if you look at it from the other side, provides you with ample opportunities. I'm talking here about a slave, about someone who is from the outset being sold and bought and humiliated and perhaps abused as a child by the buyers and the sellers. We don't know what happened. So Britain, Australia, Canada, America, you are not a slave. You are a British citizen. You are a decent taxpayer. Yes, you might be sometimes mistreated in a particular context of 7/7, for example. But yet there are ample opportunities that you can look at. And that's exactly the point that I think could be linked. He was bought by this important person, the Minister of Finance. And the good thing is that this Minister of Finance did not have any sons. So Yusuf would more or less not encounter the same problems as he encountered when he was with boys. Sisters, of course, would agree with me that boys are troublemakers. So the good thing about the palace was that there were no boys. Of course, brothers would agree with me that the only problem was the women in the house. So now we are introduced to a different kind of problem. This time, it's women. Of course, the good news for the sisters, again, I'm playing against your emotions, is that there are 10 brothers plotting against their other brother. There are no sisters. MashaAllah, sisters are caring, because you wouldn't imagine 10 sisters plotting to kill their brother. Well, maybe you would these days, but yeah. Again, you see, the Quran doesn't generalize about gender. It doesn't say women are evil, evil, evil. No. The mother of Yusuf. It doesn't always say that men are good. No, you have the brothers, you have Pharaoh, etc. So it's about morals, it's about attitude, it's not about sexuality and gender. The palace, therefore, is perhaps, you might think immediately, is a good place, particularly that the person who bought him loved him, he liked him. You see, this person buys slaves on a daily basis, but he doesn't go home and say to his wife, go and treat him in a comfortable, honorable manner. It seems that he saw in this person something that is unique. And from the outset, let me say this. You need to understand that Yusuf's talent and presence and aura should not be reduced to his looks. Because if you do that, you miss a lot of the positive sides in the character. Because whenever you say to someone, Surah Yusuf, wow, yes, the sexual temptation, I want to see that. No, we are talking about a moving character going through different processes of temptations, of different sorts and different kinds. And the looks are not an issue then, when he is in the palace, sold and bought. The looks is not an issue when these two boys come and ask him to interpret the dream. The looks is not the issue when that king makes him the king of Egypt. You don't make people kings because they are good looking. It's about skills, it's about talents, it's about other gifts that you have. What I want to say is that Yusuf, in one word, had presence. That's the word I want you to bear in mind, presence. And when I was in Waterstones the other day, I saw a massive book called The Art of Having Presence. Presence is something that you cannot work to achieve. It's a gift, it's a talent. It's when you come into a room and people feel the change in the air. This boy at the age of 12 or 13 had presence. Why else on earth would the Aziz of Masr come to his palace and say to his wife, look, he seems like a unique boy. I don't know anything about him, but I bought him and you better take care of him. He wasn't knowing very well who he was speaking to. So she went and took care of him, and that's important. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then says that when he reached and attained his full manhood, we gave him wisdom and knowledge. And it's fascinating that Allah puts wisdom before knowledge, which implies that wisdom perhaps is more important than knowledge. But the obvious implication is that wisdom is different than knowledge. You see, knowledge is what a lot of Muslims today seek to attain. Knowledge. I'm going to Mauritania, Yemen, Egypt, Syria, whatever, to attain knowledge. Fine. But he comes back and bombs the Twin Towers. That is knowledge, and they are knowledgeable people. And I always say the Khawarij, you cannot mess with the Khawarij. They were knowledgeable people. They can make you cry. I always give this example. If a Khawarij can speak English and gives a lecture here, his CDs will be bestsellers, even bestsellers than Harry Potter. Really, they are knowledgeable people, but they went killing all over, killing Muslims all over, because the paradigm in which they understood the knowledge, the point of view, was messed up. So you need wisdom. So what is the difference? Knowledge is information, 1 + 1 = 2. Wisdom is this certain talent and skill that you attain to know exactly how do you apply the knowledge that you know. Not everything that you know is applicable. Some things are applicable at a certain time, at a certain place, at a certain environment, at a certain context. Imagine Prophet Muhammad ﷺ going all the time saying hadith, 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 giving admonitions, giving mawa'id. Each hadith is about 2 minutes if it's to be articulated verbally. Maybe the longest sermon that before he died, he summed up everything, the 23 years in its entirety. But he would say, ittaqillah, la taghdab. Very brief. Does this mean that he was ignorant? Far from it, may Allah forbid. He used to say to them, Wallahi, if I tell you what I know, you will laugh a little and cry a lot. Ibn Abbas say, I know from the Prophet ﷺ many things. I told you maybe 10th, and if I told you things, I am afraid that my neck will be cut. Because he told him certain things, because he knew that his mind could accommodate and adapt and understand and comprehend, and that the common Muslims. I'm not saying that Islam creates hierarchies, but you need to be sensitive as to when, where, why, and how to speak, and to articulate the knowledge. So the real challenge is not the knowledge. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not undermining knowledge. I do respect knowledgeable people, and I do have this anxiety to increase in knowledge. But that's an aim, that's not a goal. A goal is wisdom. A goal is hikmah. That's the real challenge. So it's fascinating to realize that Yusuf had both. He had both, the knowledge and the wisdom. Of course, you tell me that, yes, of course, he was a prophet. Actually, what is fascinating in the surah, that we are not told when did Yusuf assume prophethood. And that is good news for me, because it supports my argument or supports my agenda. Because the moment I start to introduce Yusuf the prophet, you begin to dehumanize him and say, well, he's not relevant to me anymore. I want him to be as relevant, as much as relevant to you till the end when he dies. And some say he attained prophethood only when he was in prison. So even then, even when he was exposed to temptation, that is fascinating, he was not a prophet. So he attained his manhood, and we gave him wisdom and knowledge. And scholars have disagreed, and this is also fascinating, as to when did he attain his full manhood with wisdom and knowledge. Some say at the age of adolescence. Some say when he reached 33. Some say when he was 40. And they do certain readings that in the Quran says when someone reaches the age of 40, he begins to return to Allah, he begins to mature. So وَلَمَّا بَلَغَ أَشُدَّهُ means that he reached 40. And some rely on Israelites' sources, the Old Testament, and these kind of things. But the fascinating thing to me is that the age is kept enigmatic for us to believe that there is no certain or particular age in which one attains manhood or womanhood. To me, the enigma is good because it means that anyone, whether he's an adolescent or 33 or 40, can control himself against the temptation of sexual desires. So if I am told that he was 40, you would say, okay, I can commit adultery and fornication, and when I reach 40, I'll be like Yusuf. No, we don't know when did Yusuf had this self-control. And some say at the age of 15, at the age of 33, at the age of 40, which if anything tells us that we can all be like Yusuf, because we don't know exactly how old was he when he did it. You see, the Quran is very intelligent in the way in which it keeps silent about things and in the way in which it chooses to articulate certain things. So names, places, locations, date of births are not important, because if he specifies things, it will become irrelevant to those at the age of 60 and 70. And then we enter into this bit of her now seducing him, and her closing the doors and inviting him. And the verses go on to say, and indeed she did desire him, and he would have been inclined to her desire had he not seen the evidence of his Lord. Thus it was that we might turn away from him evil and illegal sexual intercourse. Surely he was one of our chosen, guided servants. I'm not going now to write you an article or a research paper on what did Allah imply when he said, and he did indeed was inclined to her, because hamma bihi wa hammat biha, there is a lot of sayings about it. But there are, suffice it to say, there are two main arguments or interpretations. The common famous interpretation is that had he not seen the evidence of his Lord, he would have been inclined to her. Because of what he saw from his Lord, he was not inclined. So the inclination actually did not happen. So it didn't materialize because prior to it being materializing, he saw the proof of his Lord. If there was no proof from his Lord, and no one knows exactly what that proof of his Lord was, he would have been inclined. So actually, he was never inclined. I think that this is a non-human way to look at the situation. A more human way, a more practical way perhaps would be to adopt, as far as I am concerned, the other argument. And that is, she was inclined to him by desire, by thoughts, that then later translated into action. She closed the doors and she spoke and said, "Come to me." He was inclined to her on a level of thoughts only, which he was then able to control and therefore did not translate into actions. And here is a point, that Islam does not judge us because of our thoughts. You can sit here, I'm not saying do it, and fantasize about whatever you want. But when you translate this into action, this is the problem. But of course, when you think too much about these thoughts, they could ultimately translate into actions. Because with the brothers, they had the thought, Yusuf is more beloved. Then I'm sure that after a month or 2 or 3 times, maybe saying, A'udhu Billah Mishtar Rajim, how can we think about such a thing? The following day, no, A'udhu Billah. The 3rd, the 4th month, let's kill Yusuf. Because they were thinking every day about it. With Yusuf, the idea came just very quickly and straight away, astaghfirullah, ma'adallah. And therefore it would never materialize into action. It's like when you are hungry or fasting or thirsty and you pass through or across, for example, I don't know if the example is appropriate to you or not, a kebab shop. And you are fasting and you have a headache and you are hungry, or McDonald's if you don't like the kebab shop. But McDonald's don't have any smell, neither taste. So you pass through it and you say, but you don't go and grab a sandwich, do you? You don't break your fast. So he smelled the perfume. He perhaps saw her and her beauty in a new context. She was never that beautiful before. And he was young. And he was a bachelor. And he was a stranger. And he has no good buddies. He has no lectures. He has no CDs, audios, books, sheikh to read Quran for him. He has nothing, no one. He's alone. The doors are closed. We are alone. Imagine, brothers. Imagine you go into the underground and take this carriage of a tube and you and a woman is in the carriage alone. That's not total isolation, is it? Because the door might open and your wife comes rushing straight away into the carriage and everything changes. But here there is no wife. Rest assured, Yusuf, because you are not married. And more importantly, you are my slave. You are my commodity. I bought you. I bred you. I gave you food and drink. When I ask you even to commit suicide, you will say yes. So why not will you do it if I say sleep with me? Do you understand? It is this context that Yusuf was exposed to. So it's for sure and only human and natural that he is to be inclined. Otherwise he's not a man. Okay? He's not a human being. That defies the logic of humanity and manhood. And he was a full man. That is important. So the scene was that the components of seduction were there. You're talking about, we say he was at the age of 40, fine. But remember that he lived his teenage years in the palace. You see, when he was young, she didn't seduce him. She seduced him only after perhaps 10, 20 years. So he lived in the palace for 20 years. He rented a flat in the middle of the market. He saw what it meant to be Saturday nights and people drunk in the street. He knows it. He lived the palace situation. He's not a naive, blind cat, doesn't know what a woman means. No, he knows it all. He knows that perhaps she was in love with him. From the looks, a man would not wait for the moment when a woman come and say, come to me. It seems that she had a terrible time trying to grab his attention. But she failed consistently last year and the year before. And only in March, for example, or in August when it was too hot, that she thought the time was appropriate. I'm trying to make you realize, without trying to make you laugh at something that is obscene. Really, we live this dirty environment on a daily basis. Not because we are in Berbic, let's live angelic life. We will go back home and everyone will go to his life. I want you to appreciate the context in which Yusuf was living. For you then to appreciate how he said, may Allah forbid. You see, if I told you, she seduced him and he said, oh, may Allah forbid. What do you expect? You expect a bearded person and here the prayer on his forehead. Ma'adallah, astaghfirullah, I'll marry you first and then we do what we can. No! There is suffering, there is a struggle. He is a stranger. He is a tourist. Look at what tourists do when they go to, I don't know, the Bahamas. He is a slave. He is a bachelor. And on the top of that, she adores him. An expression that Princess Diana used when she was saying that I adored this snooker player. I adore him. I am in love with him. أنا أعشقه. حب. Yeah. She wants him. She invites him. Sometimes that could be repulsive. Sometimes it excites some men, but in most men, if you're a decent man, I want you. No, that's repulsive. But it's not the invitation, it's the beauty. She was beautiful. How do you know? Did you see her? Well, what would you expect of an important personality who is the Minister of Finance getting married to who? Of course, he has no problem with the dowry. He has no problem with the flat. He's not going to live in a council flat, with all due respect. He has a palace. So when he gets married, he will choose the most beautiful woman. Even then he made a mistake. But anyway, she is beautiful, she has power, and really it excites some men when they are invited by powerful women. A manager in a company. And more importantly, the place is safe. وَغَلَّقَتِ الْأَبْوَابِ. The Arabic expression is very specific. غَلَّقَت. غَلَّقَت means she made sure that the doors are closed well. So when you go and put your key in a door and you twist it once, she twisted it 60 times to make sure that it will never open. Some say abwab, doors. Some of Mufassirin say that the palace was so massive that it had various doors. This door is for the guests, and this door is where the servants come from. This door where my husband come from. I'll lock it 700 times. Some say that the palace was so big that there were doors after doors after doors, doors behind doors behind doors. So the miskin husband have to open the first, the second, the third, the fourth, until he sees his wife attempting to have an affair. This is the situation. This is the palace. This is the city center. This is the internet. This is the Bluetooth. This is the sort of things that you see on TV, magazines, posters. This is the situation that Yusuf was into. Yet he said no. And I can leave you with that, but it will frustrate you, wouldn't it? I mean, especially young people. I could say, look at Yusuf, mashallah. He said no. You, brother, go and say no, ma'adallah. To the daily temptations, at work, underground, posters, even in the house. TV, satellites, internets. I can say this to you, say ma'adallah. You will say it today, tomorrow you will say ma'adha. After tomorrow, Allah. What is it that made this strong personality? What is it? And this question, I'm sorry to say, has been bugging me. Thinking, asking women, asking men, asking scholars. What is it? How can I be like Yusuf? And incidentally, how can you be like Yusuf as a woman? Because Yusuf is not a gender-based character. So even Imra'at al-Aziz, she could be like Yusuf? Yes, she could. So what are the components? Okay, here, let me play with your psyche a little bit and introduce you into the mind of Yusuf. But also introduce you into the mind of this woman. And let's together draw a list of the differences between Yusuf and this woman. To see what is it that made Yusuf say ma'adallah, to see what is it that makes a woman goes out of her feminine nature and invites a man verbally. What is it? So let's draw a list and put she and he. And let's see. She has nothing better to do. Has nothing better to do. No children. The husband is outside the house all of the time playing chess and smoking shisha and flirting with other girls perhaps because he has got lots of beautiful secretaries at work. And he doesn't care about the household. He comes home just to sleep, alone, or watches TV while eating popcorn with his big belly. That's all what he wants. He comes home expecting the palace to be clean. Of course, there were many servants, so there is no much pressure. The woman is sitting at home doing nothing. She watches neighbor is finished. She watches friends is finished. She looks at the gossip magazines. Okay, hello. She knows who had a sexual affair. Britney Spears, Brad Pitt. She follows but she still has nothing. She logs onto the internet and she begins chatting with Candy and Sandy. And then realize that Sandy and Candy is Mark and Robert. And she falls in love with Mark and Robert, even if he is the ugliest of the ugly. You see, the issue here for that woman was not the looks of Yusuf. I'm not here undermining. I will come to the looks in a minute. But I'm talking about the world in this woman, in which this woman was living in. The looks, I can understand the looks having an impact on the other women that saw Yusuf and start cutting their fingers. Because wow, amazing. I've never seen a man like that before. Well-built, hunky, beautiful hair, all the rest of it. He correlates to the ideal man that I consume in the magazines and in the posters and everything. Wow, amazing. He's an angel. I could understand that. Here the looks is applicable. But this woman is not about the looks because she's not amazed by the looks. She sees him every day for the last 20 years. It is something other than the looks. You need to understand this, brothers and sisters. You see, when you get married to the most beautiful husband, you don't wake up every day, mashallah, you are amazing, you are beautiful. He says, go and cook me some food, and you go bleeding all over your hand. Oh, you are amazing. It doesn't happen. This amazing maybe during the honeymoon, maybe during the couple of days, and then you discover that this handsome person beats you up. You begin to hate his guts. So certainly she saw in Yusuf something that she never saw in her husband. She, idle-minded, lots of spare time. He, a busy person. How do you know? The Mufassirin tell us that the experience that Yusuf got to be able to become the master and the finance minister, replacing the post of his master. You see, the person who bought him was called Al-Aziz, who was the finance minister. He died eventually. And Yusuf took his place, took his job. You know why? Yusuf wasn't just looking for power. He thought, اجعلني على خزائن الأرض إني حفيظ عليم. Make me assume this role. Why? Because I have the talent, I have the experience. How on earth did you get this experience? You were in prison for the last 15, 16, 20 years. Ah, no. But when I was in the palace, I was not doing crosswords. I was not sitting with the women eating popcorn and watching Friends and Neighbors. No. I was getting early in the morning, waking up, going out in the morning. The master entrusted him because remember, he took him as his son. So he would go, check this farm for me, collect the corn, make sure that this corn is sold with that price. This farm is not cultivating enough corns. Make sure that the following year, the person went home tired, exhausted. He have no times for sexual desires. I'm not saying that he's not a man, that he's not a human being, that he's not attracted to women, but he's not preoccupied with sex all the time. As people are here in the West, everything is sex, S-E-X. You stamp sex into everything to sell. Vital, as sexy water. Buy this car, sexy car. Buy this watch, you become sexy. I've been wearing this watch for 20 years, nothing happened. Yeah, because sex is becoming a commodity. It's becoming an identity you want to buy into. Drink Coca-Cola, Fanta, you become sexy, trendy, cool, safe, man. That's the identity you want. You are looking for this identity to be accepted by the other, preferably the opposite sex. And girls have this problem too. Become sexy in the summer, lose weight. Lose weight not because you will die out of obesity, but to be sexy for the male gaze and then go to hell. That's the logic. So Yusuf would come home exhausted and would go to bed. He has no time to think and to be obsessed. So here, he, a busy schedule. She, nothing to do. If there was Yusuf, if there was Muhammad, if there was Tom, if there was John, she would still invite. And what drove her crazy, of course, that he said, no, how on earth would you say no to such a beautiful lady? And you are a slave. She was shocked. But her respect for him increased. And this is an advice for all brothers. I think a decent lady will always respect a decent man, even if this decent man did not give in to her demands. Decency, brothers, is a human value that is appreciated even by animals, even by trunk trees. Why else did a trunk tree weep on the hands of the Prophet? Because it misses him. So the entire environment appreciates your decency. And she continued to love him, even when he went in prison. What is fascinating is that under busyness, I want you to also bear something in mind. And this is quite sensitive here, what I'm going to tell you now. Many brothers, many sisters actually engage in illicit relations and sentiments and thoughts and thinkings and actions on the hope that they will change when they get married. But it doesn't work, because you begin to develop a package, a mental package, that this package comes with you even after marriage. There are many women and there are many men that during a marriage relationship fantasize about another man, and he fantasizes about another woman. When he is sleeping with her, he's thinking about another woman. He's imagining that she is another woman. If she has black hair, he assumes that she's blonde. And so forth. And Ibn Taymiyyah, it's fascinating. Ibn Taymiyyah, who never got married, to your astonishment, said that it's haram for a brother to think about someone else other than his wife, even in the level of thinking. But there are people who do it all the time because they are bombarded with images all the time. So it's important. Or brothers that have developed an addictive habit to internet bad sites, obscene sites, when he was young. And when he gets married, he expects his wife to be adaptable to the package that he is coming from. Wear this kind of clothes, do this, do this. And the wife has not been trained to do that. If the wife has not been trained to cook, do you want her to be trained to belly dancing? It's impossible. In most cases, I don't know, but I'm just assuming. And therefore, a husband-wife relationship, and she expects him to be this, 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 and he doesn't fill the expectation. So what I'm saying is that this addiction, don't think that it will wither away when you get married. The best thing is to be decent from the beginning. Look at this story, it's fascinating. An Arab man divorced his wife after discovering that she was also his virtual girlfriend. So Sandy Candy is Muhammad that is in the kitchen. The man had been flirting with a woman on an internet chat room for several months. But when they finally met up at a bus station, he recognized her as his wife. He immediately shouted the Arabic words for, "I divorce you 3 times." The husband had assumed the online identity of Adnan, while his wife had described herself as an unmarried Muslim lady called Jamila, whose cultural interests include reading and portraying my husband. It was reported that when the man uttered the words of divorce, effectively ending the marriage, the woman responded by calling him a liar before she fainted. What is fascinating in this story is not what you think is fascinating. To me, what is fascinating is that this husband can exactly be a romantic husband. Can write rosy words and poetry. And this wife who is always changing the nappies and in the kitchen can be a romantic wife, but they have never been trained to utilize their emotional intelligence with each other. So Candy becomes Muhammad, and Muhammad becomes Candy. And Abu Ali becomes Adnan, and Adnan is Abu Ali. While they are at the same time the same people. So we need to develop this emotional intelligence, not with another woman, not with another man, but with our. So what do we deduce from here? What do we get out of this story? In our list of she and he. She felt an emotional vacuum in her life. He was emotionally filled. He was beloved by his father. He felt he was beloved by Allah. He felt in peace with himself. He didn't need the other to fulfill him. He didn't need the other to assure him that, oh, what a gorgeous man. He didn't need that. He was content. He had self-esteem. He had confidence. And this is what I said in Children Around the Prophet. That Rasul ﷺ, when he was upbringing his children, Fatima, he used to treat her what? He used to, whenever he sees her, he kisses her, he stands up for her, he kisses her on her forehead. And he makes her sit in his place. He fills her emotionally. So when she goes outside the household and she hears or sees a man telling her, what a beautiful girl, she doesn't fall for him. Because her father filled her. She comes from a stable family background. Nowadays, the daughter perceives herself in the sight of her father and mother as an evil, as devil, as ugly, as stupid, as an idiot. But when there is a real idiot outside, a real idiot wolf outside saying, wow, what a nice, beautiful girl, she falls for him. Because that's the only time and only context in which she heard someone say to her something that is beautiful. He doesn't have to be Yusuf. He doesn't have to have the looks. He just has to have the crafty mind in tapping into what a woman wants. And he knows that, while a father doesn't know it. So she was feeling and encountering an emotional vacuum, while he was emotionally filled. And of course, the third and most important, of course, is that he was connected with Allah, while she was not. But really, this connection with Allah, I want to take it a step further, because we hear a lot about connection with Allah, lowering the gaze, fear Allah, etc. But really, I would like to emotionalize the relationship between you and Allah, and that is how it should be. Do you know sometimes when you love so much, if you've experienced that, you love so much your husband, you love so much your wife, you love so much your father, you love so much your brother, you love so much someone who you love because you see and you respect, will you be able to look in a bad way to someone in a particular context in front of that person whom you love? You will feel embarrassed. Look at two brothers when they are in the underground. Everyone is doing like this. But when a girl comes, everyone is doing like this. And when he's not watching, he watches. And when he watches, he lowers his gaze. This relationship between you and your husband has been even doubly stronger between Yusuf and Allah. How on earth else would it be that in this spontaneous, urgent context of a woman saying to a man, come to me, will he be prepared so eloquently to tell her, ma'adh Allah, may Allah forbid, the first word? It's like a man saying, sorry, I'm married, or a boy, sorry, I have a girlfriend. Here it's not husband, wife, brother, sister, mother, father. Allah forbid. Which means, if anything, that Allah is present all the time in my head. So I am emotionally filled, I am busy, but more importantly, Allah is in my head. In this context, it's virtually difficult, if not impossible, to fall for anyone, be it a woman, power, man, job, any kind of temptation. This is to me the recipe that made Yusuf such a powerful character. There the husband enters. It becomes very interesting when the husband then comes to the palace and sees what has happened. And both raced to the door, and she tore his shirt from the back, and they both found her lord at the door. She said, "What is the punishment for him who intended against your wife, except that he should be put in prison or a painful tournament?" He said, "It was she that sought to seduce me, and a witness of her household bore witness. If it be that his shirt is torn from the front, then she is true and he is a liar. And if his shirt is torn at the back, then she has told a lie and he is saying the truth." Then when he saw his shirt torn at the back, he said, presumably the husband, "Surely it's a plot of you women. Certainly your plot is great." So they both raced. I want you to imagine man and woman racing to the door, but for a different purpose. He is racing to the door to try to unlock the 50 times shut keys. She is running after him because she shut these doors by her hand, and she will grab him from the back. To me, he is running from temptation. He is running from seduction. He is racing to win temptation. He is racing to win the shaitan. You encounter this race on a daily basis. You will never be able to win that race unless you are fit, unless you have this high stamina in you. How do you have this stamina? You think about it. I'm not going now to give you a course on Iman syndrome and how to increase our Iman. You need to increase your stamina. This is what I call spiritual fitness, Iman fitness, to be able to run. And make sure that when you run, you win the race. Otherwise, she will grab you from the back. She, meaning woman. I don't look at her as women. I look at her as a symbol for all sorts of temptations. But of course, sexual temptations are one of the strongest temptations. And then, really it's fascinating. And then when they open the door, they see her lord, which is her husband. Women are amazing. Just a few seconds ago she was saying, "Come to me," and now, "Oh, he was aiming to rape me." Subhanallah, this total shift and twist. That means that she was mature. I would say, I don't know, that this is perhaps not unprecedented experience. Maybe she did it before. It seems that she was prepared. She had a spontaneous response and a logic. She was not stumbling. She was not hesitant. She was not sweating. She was not saying, "Why on earth did you come at that time? You didn't call me to say I'm coming home." She wasn't saying, "I didn't do it." Straight away, she was able to formulate a very intelligent question. What are you going to do about your honor? Shouldn't you imprison this person or expose him to severe punishment? She didn't mention death, by the way, because she was in love with him. Very intelligent. That's why he says you have the greatest plot of women. And then the man, after the witness, and after realizing, this is the second time the shirt is introduced now. The shirt plays a tremendous role. The shirt could make the father cry, but the shirt could also save your life. That's how important shirts are. I'm advertising shirts now. So it is the shirt that rescued. I don't want to overstretch it now, but it is good that the shirt was torn. It's good that something bad happened to you, because maybe it is that bad thing that will rescue in the future. What is the response of the husband? Did he slap Yusuf? Did he slap her? How on earth? How dare you? O Yusuf, turn away from this. O woman, ask forgiveness for your sin. Verily you were of the sinful. Is that it? Didn't I tell you that this is the kind of husband that we are talking about? A husband that doesn't care about his wife. A husband that doesn't care that there is a man, a strange man, good-looking man, with good character and presence, is with his wife on a daily basis. He doesn't care. All what he cares about is his job. All what he cares about is his employment that enables him to pay the bills. That's all what he cares about. He doesn't have any concern for the wife, for the children, for nothing. Just about his status in society. So, keep quiet, Yusuf. And you ask for forgiveness, and that's it. Did he take Yusuf at least out of the house? Even that he did not do. And Yusuf continued to be in the house. Now, I told you something that I want to connect with this verse. Do you remember when I told you that it might have been repulsive for a woman to invite a man, and a man being attracted to a woman that invites a man verbally, because some would consider it not to be that feminine? Did you remember that? Where did I get this from? Actually, Yusuf continued to be with the woman in the house. And therefore there was another context of continuous temptation, even now if it did not involve this vulgarous way of inviting. So the temptation continued. Now he knows that she is in love with him. But she doesn't invite him anymore because the husband reproached her. She doesn't invite anymore, but the context of temptation is still there. And now she can act feminine. And now she can act normal. And now she can just look at him, smile at him, dress the following day in a certain way, wear this perfume. It is the post-invitation period which was more tempting for Yusuf than the temptation event itself. We don't know how long he stayed in the palace with her. But I would like to think that it was a long period until the scandal of the woman being in love with that man spread in the city through the Gossip Society, the magazine, the OK and the Hello magazine. Of course, the Hello and the OK magazine were represented in the group of women that spoke about the scandal. But prior to that, he was living with the... And brothers and sisters, I don't want to again dwell into that too much, because you are perhaps familiar with it. But imagine a boy or a man who knows that this woman is stalking him through the internet, emails, university halls of residence. He knows that. Surely he thinks about her, even if he dislikes her. He at least likes the idea that someone, somewhere, is in love with him. So Yusuf is sitting every day in his room. What am I doing here? This is dangerous for me. So the palace and its environment continued even after the temptation, and I would like to argue that this was more tempting, more testing, because he had access to the women within the palace than at the moment when she invited him, which might have been repulsive for a man. And then the story began to develop that everyone now knew outside the palace that this woman is in love with this man. How did they know that? Because after the temptation, you see, when the husband came, the file was closed, so no one was aware of it. How did these women therefore knew about the love affair? Because the temptation continued in the palace, and now the servants were becoming aware of it. The servants did not witness the confrontation between the husband and the wife and Yusuf. They were only the three of them and the witness, the fourth. But now the temptation continued. Everyone realized that this woman is in love with this man, which means that it became something that is now noticeable and obvious. It is in this context now that servants began to speak to the servants of the other palace and the servants of the other close by houses. And this is how the women in other palaces' houses became aware that in this palace of the finance minister, there is a love affair going on. And women in the city said, "The wife of Al-Aziz is seeking to seduce her young man. Indeed, his love has deepened in her heart. Verily, we see her in plain error." So when she heard of their whispering, she sent for them and prepared a cushioned couches or seats and gave to each of them a knife and said, come out before them, which means that he was still in the house. Then when they saw him, they exalted him and cut their hands and said, Allah forbid. He is not a mankind. He is not but a noble angel. Now, two things to be said about the woman and about the woman of the Al-Aziz, the one that was seducing Yusuf. Both were living idle-minded. The women were gossiping because they have nothing better to do. And the other woman, which is Imra'at Al-Aziz, was responsive to their gossip because she was not busy doing something else, which endorses what I was saying when I was drawing the list, he and she. So this is the behavior of a woman that is receptive and sensitive to any kinds of gossip. She reads the daily tabloid newspapers, she's aware of all the accusations, and she even has time to go and plot against those who are gossiping against her. So she invited them and she prepared them with a seating and gave them knives and said to Yusuf, "Ukhruj alayhin." And when they saw him, they were shocked. Of course, scholars have exaggerated the beauty of Yusuf, and some scholars even explain them in a very feminine way, which is not befitting to a prophet. Because the Mufassirin are males, so they try to describe him as they would describe a beautiful woman, which defies the logic of it. He was a beautiful man, beautiful in a manly manner. So that was important. Of course, some Mufassirin say, I'm not sure whether this is true or false, they say that he was so beautiful that sometimes he would cover his face so that he doesn't create inconvenience to the female world. You might be surprised. But that is the extent. He has no problem, him seeing, but him being seen, that was problematic. She said, "This is he about whom you did blame me, and I did seek to seduce him, but he refused. And now if he will not do what I order him, then he will certainly be put in prison, and he will be one of those who are disgraced." Then he said, "O my Lord, prison is more to my liking than to which they invite me. Unless you turn away their plot from me, I will feel inclined towards them and be one of the ignorance." Look, this is the human speaking now. He's not saying, "Oh Allah, leave me in the palace and inshallah, I am a prophet, you will protect me, but the palace seems comfy and nice and warm." No, this is dangerous. "Oh Allah, I am a human being. Now we are talking about 60 women that are seducing me. It's not just anymore this woman, it's everyone. I cannot resist, oh Allah. Prison is better for me." What is fascinating here is that in the context of temptation, he should be happy now that women are after him in a theoretical. And even then, even if he is not happy, you know, there are certain contexts of temptation in the market or in the TV. You sometimes see things, but you don't necessarily remember Allah in that context. Why is it that you get the best reward when you say the dua of the market? Why is it? Because when you go to the market, you are busy with shopping, and so you get about 1 million hasana if you say La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah, lahul mulk wa lahul hamd, yuhyi wa yumit, wa huwa hayyun la yamut, wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. Why? Because in the context of a market, which is perhaps one of the evil places in contrast to a mosque. Why going to a mosque the dua is so short? Because everyone remembers dua, you are going to make dhikr. But the market, you get a lot of reward because it's not conducive to remembering Allah. The point is that in this context of seduction and temptation, which is not conducive to someone thinking about anything to do with Allah, but to do with his manhood, "Oh, I didn't know that I was that cool." It is that context that he was able to withdraw himself, not to talk to the women, not to talk to the girls, not to say, "Oh, you've cut your hand, you know, I know first aid." Oh, no, inshallah, I'll talk to you about dawah, sister. Let's talk about dawah. No, he didn't get involved with all that because he knows this is dangerous. This is not conducive to da'wah now. This dictates an immediate withdrawal because it's reaching a point that is intolerable, unbearable. And it is in this context that we see Yusuf withdrawing himself and praying to Allah. And again, this links very well with the connection that I was telling you, that Allah is always in the conscious and in the subconscious of Yusuf, irrespective of what the other is doing or saying. And something else to do with him favoring prison. Now, this is a boy who has traumatic experiences with darkness, traumatic experiences with loneliness, traumatic experiences with being in the middle of nowhere. So why on earth would he replicate this negative experience that he experienced or encountered in the well by wanting to relive this experience in prison? You would expect him to fear anything to do with darkness. This is the paranoia I was saying to you, that he did not become paranoid from mice, because if I go to prison there will be mice. No, I don't want mice. When I was 12 I had mice all over my body. No. Because he's thinking now in new terms. To me, prison is better than the palace. He wasn't thinking that prison is going to be worse than the well. He's not thinking about the well now. He's thinking about the palace. That is shifting the way in which he's thinking and prioritizing where he wants and does not want to be. But something else other than that. And that is, to him, it seems, again, in the same way that Egypt was an opportunity for him to expand in knowledge and broaden his mind and not to go back to Palestine, perhaps he thought that prison is another opportunity to engage with the outer society and to begin now to give da'wah in the proper, serious sense. But more importantly to him, prison was real freedom, because to him, prison constrains the body, not the mind and the soul. Being in the palace, I might enjoy 60 bathrooms and 70 bedrooms, but that's constraining my soul. That's constraining my mind. I don't want to think about women. I don't want to think about seduction. I have greater energies that should be channeled to upper, higher aspirations and achievements. I don't want to continue thinking about my lower parts. I have a brain, I have a heart, I have muscles, I have energy. Maybe prison will enable me to exercise these energies and channel them positively in a way that the palace would not do. And indeed, throughout history, prison have always been a turning point in the life of great people. People like Ibn Taymiyyah, people like Malik, people like Abu Hanifa, people like Ash-Shafi'i. They were all imprisoned. People like Malcolm X, people like Gandhi, people like the person who they did a statue for, Mandela. So prison is an opportunity for greatness and the expansion of the mind and the brain. Then it appeared to them, after they had seen the proofs, to imprison him for a time. This is, incidentally, the same negative way of thinking that the brothers had. The husband thought that rather than dealing with his wife and trying to patch up relations and say, I'll be a good husband for you, he thought that the best solution is to remove Yusuf, again in the same way that the brothers thought of removing Yusuf. Which of course defied the logic, because the women continued to love Yusuf in the same way that Yaqub continued to love Yusuf despite his absence and his presence in prison. I have ended the palace. Let me therefore read to you the concluding remarks. Number one, Yusuf was exposed to a radical shift from being the beloved son of a prophet to one who is as a slave bought and sold. Two, although a difficult experience, Yusuf was able to adapt to it and utilize it to gain new experiences and new opportunities, which he would then use to benefit himself, but also benefit society, as we will come to learn later. Three, Yusuf made sure that he did not live a passive or an idle life, but maintained a daily engaged schedule. As a young bachelor, that helped turn away his thinking from illicit sex. Four, Islam recognizes sexual desire because Allah created it for a purpose, but this desire should not become an end and an obsession. Energy should be positively channeled to attain higher achievements. 5, illicit practices of a sexual nature prior to marriage develop into strong habits which die hard even after marriage. things such as fantasizing, comparing, and affairs. And there's a hadith that says the first people that Allah will punish are a group of people. One of them is a zani sheikh. A sheikh, an old man who is continuously committing adultery and fornication. Now, the tafsir of this hadith is that he will be punished because he's a sheikh, he's an old man. He shouldn't be thinking about these things now by that age. He should be thinking about more spiritual matters, that he is married now and has children, etc. But he continues to commit adultery. But another tafsir actually, or another interpretation, seems also to be relevant. And that is the fact that this man have always got into the habit of having affairs with women. So much so that age, marriage, having children, grandsons and granddaughters did not change his habits. So he will die in his adultery. 6, emotional fulfillment is a natural need and should be satisfied first at home by the parents and later husband or wife. Preoccupied with other engagements at the expense of nourishing this desire could lead it to being sought from illicit channels. 7, affairs destroy confidence and trust in a marriage relationship and could lead to the other party engaging in an affair by way of revenge. When I wrote this, which I cannot verify, I wrote it and I had in mind that perhaps the husband was engaging in affairs, being a busy person, being outside the household most of the time, being an important person, famous person. That's why we get a lot of scandals in the paper about this politician and this politician falling in love, having a love affair with the secretary, because he sees the secretary perhaps more than he sees his wife. Number 8, one would not be able to counter seduction if he is not well connected with Allah through a love and fear relationship. Number 9, a change of environment whenever applicable is advised when one fears for his chastity. قولوا قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعه بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. Now we are in theme 3, which we are introduced to Yusuf now, the character, but in a different location, in a different context, in a different situation. And this theme is about his encounter with the people, sharing with him that space and that context. The prison was the context that provided Yusuf with his first platform to actively interact with a society which he didn't share common beliefs with. While he fulfilled his duty to invite them to Islam, he continued to enjoy a constructive relationship with this society, irrespective of religious differences. This relationship was not based on a passive coexistence dictated by the inescapable conditions of imprisonment, but generally on utilizing one's talents and experiences to providing much needed services. This provision of services to a human community was a consistent element in Yusuf's attitude inside and outside prison. So that's the paradigm in which I will be approaching Yusuf's experience in prison. And 2 young men entered prison with him. One of them said, "I dreamed that I am pressing wine." The other said, "I dreamed that I am carrying bread on my head, and birds were eating thereof. Tell us the interpretation of this. Verily, we see you a righteous person." This is now, we are told from the outset that in prison he's not lonely, he's not being in a cell by himself, and that he is interacting with people. Of course, the Mufassirin tells us that he was interacting with many people, and on a daily basis. But the Quran zoomed the camera into this episode of interaction between him and 2 particular young people, 2 particular young men. It doesn't mean that there were no other young or senior men, but these 2 young men give you a glimpse of something that will be of relevance later in the release of Yusuf and in his assumption of power. Now, this is the first time in which we are introduced to Yusuf talking properly now. With his brothers, he was silent. with his father, he was brief because he was in a process and in a stage of listening and learning. In the palace, he has no time to talk because he's so busy. And he was so brief. When he was enslaved, he didn't want to go back to Palestine. And they wouldn't appreciate what he has to say anyway. So he kept silent throughout. Some say that perhaps he began to talk because he was now a prophet. And now it became a duty for him to speak and to talk. But I would like to think that there was another reason. That it seems that he found that the prison is a more conducive context and environment that will make people be more receptive to him than when he was in the palace. You see, when he was in the palace, he was perceived as a slave. And the husband is most of the time out. The woman is obsessed with him. She's not in the state of mind of him speaking to her about God or about Allah or about Islam. And it's dangerous anyway to speak to her because there is already a dangerous context that has been created. Prison is different. Prison, you have people who don't know when they will be released. People who are depressed. People who some of them might be hanged the following day. People who are more receptive. People who are of the same age, two young men. People who might be slaves like him. People who have a common ground in which they will become more receptive. And therefore, this context is more conducive for da'wah. Now, what's the point? What am I getting at? I am trying to tell you that yes, invitation, you invite people to Islam as a principle. Yes, you do that. But you need to be aware of your surrounding. And whether your surrounding is conducive for people to listen to you or not. Sometimes people will not listen, but will see. So you act. Sometimes people will not listen, but they will read. So you write. Some people at that instant will not want to listen because they are angry. 9/11, 7/7, you wait for a month and keep quiet and say no comment. And when feelings calm down a little bit, you begin to speak. All what I'm saying now, I'm not giving you blueprints on when to speak, how to speak, and what to say. All what I'm saying is that you have an example here of someone who's not just talking, Allahu Akbar, I am Yusuf, my name is Yusuf, I am a Muslim, become Muslim. No. Someone who goes in prison, who looks at the surrounding and say, I think I will have an audience now. So that's number one, an awareness of your surrounding when dealing with the other, when interacting with the other. Number two, what is it that attracted those two young men to come and seek advice from Yusuf? What is it? Of course, here we are not told by the Quran. But the Mufassirin said that those two young people were observing Yusuf for a long time. You see, I told you something, if you remember. A son going and saying to his father, revealing to him some of his intimate secrets, a dream. That's very private. The son knows his father, and that's why he loves his father, and that's why he trusts his father, and that's why he reveals that secret. You don't go to Oxford Street and someone suddenly says, brother or mister, I have a dream. You don't do that. Or, I have a dream, please interpret that dream for me because you look good, you look nice. It doesn't happen. Those people, the Quran doesn't tell us that, but this is important. You deduce that those people were watching Yusuf, were interacting with him on a daily basis. Have you seen movies where they show you prisons, like The Great Escape, Clint Eastwood sitting in the dinner table with lots of prisoners in the cell, and everyone is trying to pick a fight with the strongest person, and everyone is watching and scrutinizing, and Yusuf is a newcomer, and they are, who's that? Oh, that's the slave that this woman tried to seduce. Well, yeah, he looks all right. And then they come closer. What's your name? Yusuf. Ah, nice to meet you. My name is John, Mark, whatever. Okay, fine. The following day, let's play, let's interact. The following day, after a building process of trust, then they say, by the way, we have a dream, and we think that you can interpret it for us. So what am I talking about? I am saying that da'wah or invitation will not come out of context without first building a trust relationship with the society in which we are living in. So I cannot invite a community or a society to Islam when I am perceived to be a terrorist, because people are psychologically switched off and they don't want to listen to me. I have to first try to show that I am a caring person in the society. I am contributing to the betterment of this society. I am not terrorist. I don't condone the use of violence. And only in that stage, and that takes time. It's not through a pamphlet or a lecture. Yusuf was not writing pamphlets and slipping it under the prison doors of those people. Yusuf was silent, but acting right. And that's why they said, verily, we see you righteous. They didn't say we see you handsome. They didn't say we see you good looking. That's a women issue. Now, it's a man looking at a man from a non-aesthetical looks point of view, looking at behavior, looking at decency, looking at straightforwardness and upright moral attitude. Then he seems cool, safe. Let me now disclose my dream to him. I have a dream. So that's the second point. The third point, Yusuf is not just a religious clergyman or a prophet in the spiritual sense, just praying and making dua, because that is not enough to build a social relationship. That's between you and God. We are not just talking about a religious, righteous person. We are talking about a likable, sociable character that interacts with the community regardless of the religious differences. From where did you bring that? The Mufassirin tells us that prior to those two boys coming to Yusuf and asking for help and advice, they would see Yusuf interacting in prison. He would visit the depressed. He would soothe them and calm them and try to heal them. Whenever a prisoner falls ill, he would go and visit him. We are not told this, but the Mufassirin tells us that Yusuf built a rapport, built an air of presence and respect. And this respect has only been manifested as an example by these two boys, but there have been perhaps other boys coming into him for other social problems. What is it are you trying to tell us? I'm trying to tell you that being a good Muslim in the religious sense, in the spiritual sense, will benefit only you. But you need to also develop a likable personality, a sociable personality, that is then becomes appreciated with human beings, regardless whether they are Jews, Christians, Hindus, Buddhists, or even atheists. And that's why in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, إِذَا أَتَاكُمْ مَنْ تَرْضَوْنَ دِينَهُ وَخُلُقَهُ فَزَوِّجُوهُ, that when someone proposes and that you are happy with his deen and his morals, with his akhlaq, give him your daughter. Now here Rasulullah makes a distinction between deen, that he prays and has a spot on his forehead, and between akhlaq. Akhlaq is what the wife will get from him, not the deen. The deen is between him and Allah. Of course, certainly there is a correlation, but that does not necessarily lead to the other. And there is a real story where a wife is complaining that her husband is religious, he's pious, but he is stingy. He doesn't spend on her. So she wants, for example, ice cream. He says, no, ice cream is not good for you. She wants McDonald's. No, this is the Mac world, capitalism. No, and expensive. She wants trousers. Okay, no, let's wait until Christmas or August, or when there is a 70% off on selected items, and that might not be the item. So stingy, doesn't want to spend any money. But he's religious. When the adhan, he goes to the mosque, etc. So the wife went and complained to her mother. And the mother went and spoke to the husband. You know what the husband said to her? He said, look, when I proposed, you asked about my deen. I told you, and I wasn't a liar. I told you that I pray, I told you that I fast, I told you that I went to Hajj. You didn't ask about my akhlaq. If you asked me, I would have told you that I am stingy. If you asked me, I would have told you. But you didn't, you never asked. So, sisters, again, you need to understand this. No brother will tell you this, I will tell you this. They will hate me for that. Brothers, this is an advice as well. I'm not trying to say, don't give the benefit of the doubt, that when you see a hijab sister, etc., when you see this is good, he's good, he's not drinking. But it's deeper than that. A marriage relationship, a commitment, a permanent, is deeper than the beard and the hijab. The hijab is not going to be in the bedroom or in the kitchen. Or what's going to be in the kitchen is the child screaming and the nappies everywhere in the house. That's the real world of marriage. I'm sorry for those who are bachelors. Marriage is nice, but it's more complicated than that. You need to be trained. It's not just about beauty, romance, and roses. This is the first month, perhaps, or this first year, so that you don't get upset. But that's not the entire world or life. So, a likable personality. Yusuf was not a person of deen. He was a person of akhlaq. And because of that akhlaq, non-Muslims appreciated him. If it was deen, I don't know how to pray. I'm not a Muslim. But I appreciate a flower. I appreciate someone stroking me and saying, inshallah, you will be good, you will be healed. I appreciate that. This is a human language. And in Islam, you have this human language, which caters for a different audience than the Muslims. He said, no food will come to you as your provision, but I will inform its interpretation before it comes. Now, this is the immediate response for their request. He said, look, I want you to know, not only can I interpret this dream for you, you had bread on your head and the birds were eating from it and you were pressing wine. I will deal with that later, but in a minute, just let me tell you something. In fact, I can interpret anything for you. I can tell you what sort of food will come to you now in prison, whether it's dal, whether it's orange, whether it's zarda, whether it's curry, whether it's kebab, whether it's fish and chips. I can tell you what will come now. I can also tell you that if you saw any kind of food in your dreams, I can interpret. Not only wine, not only bread, I can tell you anything and everything. What is he trying to do? A sales manager trying to sell them a product, trying to tell them, look, I am Yusuf, the cool guy in prison, I know it all. No, 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 no. You see, there is an intelligent mind planning. What does he want? He wants to impress them. He wants to win their trust because he wants now to talk about Islam. But before doing that, he needs to show that he is talented, he is skilled. In Egypt during his time, you know who were considered the intellectuals of the society in Egypt? The dream interpreters, the healers, the politicians, the economists. In every society, in every time, there are the elites. Back in the 20s, there were the lawyers, the solicitors. 50s and 60s, the medics and the engineers. Today, the techno, the business, the know-how. Allah knows after 1,000 years who will be. At his time, the techno, the cream of society, were the dream interpreters. So what did he want to show them? He wanted to tell them that, look, I supersede the cream of society. If you respect that, then be prepared to where I come from, because I will have news for you about my beliefs. Now he's going to create a context to invite. As if he's saying to himself, the interpretation of dreams is a piece of cake for me. That's not the issue. I will interpret for them. You will die tomorrow and you will be released the day after. That's not a problem. The problem is, how can I approach them now? He doesn't take money. He doesn't charge for interpretations. But he takes in return attentive listening. So what he's doing, he's creating an air of concentration, an air of respect. So this is the verse that comes to serve that context in which he is creating. This talent of mine, it's not because I've been to Harvard, Oxford, Cambridge. It's not because I'm good looking, handsome. It's not because I'm the son of so-and-so. This talent that you respect a lot, do you know who gave it to me? Allah. Now Allah is in the conversation. Yusuf, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in the bread. I'm interested in the wine. What does it mean? No, wait, listen. I will tell you, but just listen. I want to tell you these skills, because you might one day have these skills if you believe in Allah and be able to interpret the dreams yourself. This is of that which my Lord has taught me. Verily, now, this is from Allah, but he enters now into Aqeedah. Verily, I have abandoned the religion of a people that didn't believe in Allah and are disbelievers in the hereafter. And I followed the religion of my fathers, Ibrahim, Ishaq, Yaqub. It's not for us to associate anything with Allah. This is from the grace of Allah upon us and mankind, but most men don't thank. Now he is speaking. Now he's eloquent. Why didn't you say this to the women? Why didn't you say this to Al-Aziz? Why didn't you say this to your brothers? Why didn't you say this to those who caught you when you were in the well? Why? I had the knowledge, but it was unwise at that time to speak about such matters. So here we have a distinction between knowledge and between wisdom, between knowing something and choosing the right moment to articulate it. But you see this discourse, how he brings them? He says, food, I can interpret any kind of food, not just bread and wine, because this is what Allah taught me. And this is what I believe in. And this is where I come from. He's talking now about Aqeedah. And this is important. The fourth point is the clarity of the discourse. There is no politics. There is no diplomacy. There is no, first of all, look at this corruption in Egypt. You know why I'm here in prison, man? Yeah, this woman, she seduced me and they throwed me in prison. Those corrupt rulers, man. Let's bomb them, man. No. He didn't bring anything of such matter because these are branches. These are debatable, disputable issues. You focus the concentration of the society that you are living with on the major pillars of belief. And that is Allah, prophethood, the books of Allah. And then he begins to continue to talk. Oh, my two companions of the prison, are many different lords better than Allah, the one, the irresistible? Look, he's asking questions. This is also beautiful when you speak. What's happening to us? You tell me what's happening. Why the Muslims? You get him engaging and thinking. And what is fascinating here, he could have said, are many different lords better, or Allah, the one, the irresistible? But why is it, oh, my two companions of the prison? I like the word, my two companions. You are sahibi as-sijn. You are sahibi. You are my friend. You are my buddy. So, John, Mark, what is it in the society? What are we going through? You know my friend? You know my neighbor? What is he doing here? He's trying to create a common platform, a common background, a common link, because we are friends of prison. The prison now is, the prison is Britain. The prison is the United States. Oh, my British fellow citizens, we are sharing the same earth. Of course I have to care about the ozone layer. Of course I have to care about the environment. I shouldn't be happy when I hear that a jungle in the United States has been burned. Yeah, those, damn them, the kuffar. No! This is my earth. This is my prison. You are my companions on this earth. Brothers and sisters, we need a Yusufi approach to the way in which we are living in the West. Yusuf could have set a fire in prison and escaped through fire exit. And to hell with those criminals, drug addicts. What am I doing with those evil people? No. He was visiting the ill. He was helping, providing services. And when he creates a trust relationship, then he talks to them about Islam. He doesn't compromise. He doesn't say, peace, 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 no jihad, peace, peace, peace. That's not the discourse. He's telling them, yes, there is peace, and there is jihad, and Allah is one, and this is Islam. Human rights, what do you think about democracy? Yes, democracy is good, but there are some issues. What about this? What about that? He has an answer and a response. But he knows when to articulate what answer and what response at a particular context. Are you with me? I'm sorry I'm overexcited, but really, it bugs me listening to certain discourses outside. Where do they come from? Go to the Quran. Go to the Quran and be inspired by its light and mercy. The entire of Surah Yusuf is speaking to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in Mecca, telling him how to deal with Abu Jahl and Abu Lahab, and with the Muslims in exile, and with the Muslims, Yusuf in prison in Egypt, and with the Muslims in Glasgow, UK, Leicester, Sydney, Canada, Toronto, Washington, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, everywhere. And I do believe that after 1,000 years from now, someone will sit here and listen and talk about Yusuf and say totally different things based on the different paradigms that would have been created at his time. That's the beauty, that's the multidimensional. Have you seen The Matrix? The Matrix is one of the movies that have introduced this speedy way of looking at things from 60 million angles and directions. That's to me the Quran. That's to me the Quran, that you can twist it and do it like this and do it like that. And still, you look at it from the bottom and the top and the right and the left, and you can still feel it's relevant to you. That's fascinating. And he dialogues, he talks, he doesn't use weapons, he doesn't use bombs. He invites them through dialogue, through dropping a question, through asking them logical questions. And he's saying to them, you don't worship besides him, but only names which you have named, you and your fathers, for which Allah has sent down no authority. There is no judgment but of Allah. He has commanded that you worship none but him. This is the straight religion, but most men don't know. La ikraha fi din, there is no compulsion in religion. Do you know when this verse was revealed? This verse was revealed when Rasul wanted to expel Bani Nadir. Bani Nadir is a Jewish tribe. They did a mistake, they did something that was wrong, and there was a covenant, there was an agreement, they betrayed, and Rasul said, you need to leave. Previously, a woman in Medina would not have children because the child is born and the child dies after a month or two. A group of women said, because at that time there was no Islam, Judaism, they perceived it as the true religion in comparison to atheism, which they were. So they would say that if Allah blesses us with a child, we will make him Jew. This is nether from us, by Allah. When Allah bless us with a child, we will make him a Jew. So when Rasul expelled Bani Nadir, by that time there were many Jewish young boys who their fathers and mothers were Muslims. So those fathers and mothers went to Bani Nadir when Rasul wanted to expel them and started to pressurize the sons before they leave to become Muslims. Oh, don't leave. Don't leave. Become a Muslim. If you become a Muslim, you will not leave. Denounce Judaism. Rasul said, no, don't do that. Don't ask them to denounce Judaism. Leave them alone. And in this context, can you believe that, brothers and sisters? قَدْ تَبَيَّنَ الرُّشْدُ مِنَ الْغَيِّ. It's clear now. Leave them. Leave Shimon, Rabin, Simon, Shimon, Samuel. Leave them. La ikraha fi din. It is in this context. So I cannot compel you to become a Muslim. Yusuf could not compel. And after that, he began to interpret the dreams. O my two companions of the prison, as for one of you, he will serve wine for his lord to drink. He didn't say to him, you will be released, but don't sell wine. To his religion, wine is permissible. To the Hebrews, wine is haram. And as for the other, he will be crucified. Bad news. And the birds will eat from his head, not your head. The matter about which you inquired has been decreed. Now, did they become Muslims? Did this person who was shocked to know that the following day he will become dead and crucified, did he become Muslim? Some Mufassirin say yes. Some Mufassirin say both were Muslims. But the best Mufassirin say, we don't know. And it's good that we don't know. You know why? Because Allah wants to tell us that invitation to Islam is a principle regardless of the consequences or the results. It's not your business whether they will believe or not. That's in the hands of Allah. Your business is to try to persuade and convince. Because if the results were positive, every time the results are negative with us, we will begin to say, what's happening? We are not doing the right thing. No, you are okay, but Allah did not will. And this links with the death of the uncle of Rasul ﷺ, while Rasul ﷺ trying to persuade him to become a Muslim, yet he chooses not to. And the other thing, provision of services unconditionally. After he said what he said, now he interprets the dreams. He does not say, you become Muslims first, and I will interpret the dreams. He does not say, who are you? Al-wala wal-bara, I should hate the kuffar. Why should I give you good news? You are going to be released. Only you, I'll tell you, I'll interpret it. You will die. As of you, I don't know the dream. No, that's not the issue. He perceives himself as a citizen of Egypt. He now assumes Egyptian citizenship. And these are his fellow citizens sharing with him the earth. And he has to provide services, interpretation of dreams, computer skills, technology, professorship, teaching, accountancy. Provide skills to the community in which you are living with. I am done with half of the session because we have the beautiful king sleeping now, dreaming about 7 cows. You need to understand this dream as well, because it is that dream that will ultimately lead to the release of Yusuf from prison, and we shift to another scene where he then begins to reunite his family again. Now we are introduced to a new scene that takes place outside the prison, but will have its positive impact on Yusuf inside prison. And he said to the one whom he knew to be saved, mention me to your Lord, but Shaitan made him forget. Now Shaitan made him, some said him, relates to Yusuf, but the majority opinions say relates to the man that was saved. The man that was saved was so happy that he forgot everything about Yusuf. But Shaitan made him forget to mention it to his Lord, and here the Lord is not Allah, if you take the other opinion, but is the king. So he stayed in prison for several years more. بضع سنين in Arabic could be between 3 and 9. So no one knows exactly how much. If you want a number, some Mufassirin say 7 years. So Yusuf stayed for 7 years. How many days? How many hours? How many months? Only because he doesn't want to live in prison? Only because he doesn't want to live in the palace? And only because of the hypocrisy of the society in which he was living in? Yet, that did not traumatize him and did not create a hating person towards society. He wasn't saying, the moment I'm released from prison, I will destroy this woman. I will bomb all airports in Egypt. He wasn't saying like this. He wasn't thinking like this. Actually what he was thinking about is the betterment of Egypt and the advancement of Egypt. And the king said, now we are introduced into a new scene. And the king said, I saw 7 fat cows, that they are being eaten by 7 lean ones. And of 7 green ears of corn, and 7 others dry. O notables, explain to me my dream, if you can interpret dreams. They said, mixed up false dreams, and we are not skilled in the interpretation of dreams. Now he remembers, after 7 years. And the one who was saved of the 2 said, when he remembered after a long time, I will tell you its interpretation, so send me forth. O Yusuf, the man of truth, give us interpretation regarding 7 fat cows which are being eaten by 7 lean ones, and 7 green ears and the other 7 dry, that I may return to the people and that they may know. Now this is quite a strange dream, because as they say, the king saw in the dream 7 cows, fat ones, eaten by lean, thin cows. This is difficult to imagine, because usually the fat cows eats the lean ones, not the opposite. And then he sees green ears of corn sharing the same soil with other 7 dry ones, sharing the same soil, sharing the same water, sharing the same environment. Yet 7 are green and 7 are dry. And that's why they said this is a funny dream. This is adghaf ahlam, mixed false dream. It seems that you have eaten so much in the evening that when you went to bed you began to see cows, and this is the cream of society, O notables, he's saying. Then one, the wine presser, the wine giver of the Malik, remembers the conversation that he had with Yusuf. And if anything, it shows that people might not necessarily change 100%, 180 degrees and become Muslims, but at least they will remember you. Yes, I know. I remember a Muslim 20 years ago I met in my work. He was called Muhammad. Such a nice person. And that's what you want. At least people to appreciate that you have this nicety in you. And he came to Yusuf. And look what he says. O Yusuf, man of truth. You remember this person who, when he saw the dream, what did he say? وَدَخَلَ مَعَهُ السِّجْنَ فَتَيَانِ قَالَ أَحَدُهُمَا إِنِّي أَرَى. 2 young boys entered with him in prison. One of them said to him, interpret for us the dream. Now he's saying, O Yusuf, man of truth. You see, the language has changed. He might have not been a Muslim, but now there is a discourse of respect. O Master, O Man of Truth. What did the kuffar used to call Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? As-Sadiq Al-Amin. So even if society does not share with you common beliefs, at least attain the society's respect and appreciation for your talents and services. Now, if you were in the position of Yusuf, if I, not you, so that you don't get offended, if I was in the position of Yusuf, I would say, didn't I tell you 7 years ago to mention me to the king? You are a matlabi, maslahi person. You just come when there are interests involved. You are leaving me here in the midst of the darkness for last 7 years. And only when your king sees cows, fat and lean, coming for me to interpret them. By the way, what's your name? Are you still called Mark? Didn't I tell you to call yourself Abdullah? Yusuf is a fascinating character. Yusuf has got a magnificent heart that goes beyond these specificities, particularities. My brothers slapped me, the women seduced me, we are living in a corrupt society. Why did you come to me after 7 years? Why did you forget me? No. He is into policies. He is into vision. He is into plans. He is into grand change. That is not to do with his self and egocentrism, but with a societal change. A very important point. The Mufassirin say that he did not here engage in da'wah. Why? Because he already spoke to him about da'wah. He did not say to him, before I interpret the dream, did you become a Muslim or not? That's besides the point. Straight away we are entered into the interpretation of the dreams. So the conversation that he had with him about Islam, he had already had with him 7 years ago. So he's not becoming repetitive so as not to bore the listener. Straight away dwells into the interpretation. He said, you will do cultivation for 7 continuous years. Then what you reap, leave in its ears, except little of which you may eat. Then after it, there will come 7 hard years that will eat up what you have stored up for them before, except a little of which you've saved. Then thereafter will come a year in which people will have rain, and in which they will press wine and oil. Amazing! These cows symbolize years. These ears of corn symbolize famine, abundancy, years. Years of famine, eating 7 years of abundant years. Now, if I was an interpreter of dreams, I would say, okay, you will have 7 abundant years, and then after that you will have 7 years of famine. And I would not do anything wrong because I've interpreted the dream. You see, Yusuf is not interpreting dreams. In addition to the interpretation, he is constructing policies. I didn't ask you to tell me to cultivate continuously for 7 years. I didn't ask you on how I could eat and what to eat and what not to eat and to save and not to save. And what is also fascinating, in addition to the policies, is that he is giving him something that did not occur in the dream. He's going beyond the interpretation by telling him that after 14 years, 7 years of abundancy and 7 years of famine, you will get an extra number 15 year, which is full of abundance. That is not in the dream. But I am so kind that I'm even extrapolating what will happen to you after 14 years. Can you see the level? Can you see the way in which this person is thinking? I'm asking you for £1, you write me a check for £100. What is Yusuf doing here by drawing these policies? Do you know what he is doing? By saying, تَزْرَعُونَ سَبْعَ سِنِينَ دَأَبًا. You know what da'aban? Da'aban is translated here for 7 continuous years. Da'aban, continuous. Actually, da'aban is, yes, continuous, but continuous with consistency. Don't sleep in the evening. Work day and night, because you are going to have 7 years of famine. Don't waste time. I'm not talking about continuous couple of hours a day. No. If you can cultivate for 24 hours, do it, because you will need that. What on earth is he doing? Do you know what he's doing? He is emancipating the energies of a non-Muslim society to be saved from death, destruction, and famine. He is releasing their energies. He's teaching them the art of releasing their energies and telling them, look, there is no time for sexual seductions. There is no time for gossip magazines. There is no time for chilling out and having fun and not working too hard, because you cannot afford it, O Egyptians. You need to work day and night in order to attain prosperity for the coming 15 years. Not only is he doing that, not only is he releasing the energies and emancipating them, but he is doing so within a schedule, within a time period, within a deadline. He's not a time waster. He has a vision, but he has also a schedule. Do you know that when the Sahaba dug the trench, the Battle of the Trench, when they dug the trench around Medina, they say that the depth of this trench was no less than 3 meters, and the weight of it is about 2 meters. They dug it in 2 weeks. That's exactly cultivation for continuous years. That's exactly da'aban. That's exactly digging a trench day and night, but in a schedule. Yusuf did it, Rasul ﷺ did it. And the king said, bring him to me. But when the messenger came to him, he said, no. He said, return to your Lord. And asked him, what happened to the women who cut their hands? Surely my Lord is well aware of their plot. He didn't say, go and ask what happened to the woman who closed the doors 50 times and torn my shirt. Because he still respects her. Because he's still grateful for her. She gave him food. She gave him shelter. Remember, akrimi mathwah, make him comfortable. Muslims are grateful. Muslims do not forget what good others have done to them, even if those them were the responsible people behind the unjust accusation and imprisonment for over 7 years. He said, the king, what was your affair when you did seek to seduce Yusuf? The woman said, Allah forbid. We did not find any evil in him. The wife of Al-Aziz. This is the happy ending of the story. The wife of Al-Aziz said, now the truth is discovered. It was I who sought to seduce him, and he is surely of the truthful. This is in order that he may know that I didn't betray him behind his back. And verily Allah does not guide the plot of the betrayers. And I free not myself. Verily the self is inclined to evil, except when my Lord bestows his mercy. Verily my Lord is oft forgiving, most merciful. Now she's old. She's still beautiful, but she's mature now. She loves him, but she's in control now. Things have changed after all these years. She confesses. She changes. She repents. Did he give her da'wah? Did he smack her? Did he make dua against her and for her to be destroyed? Did he even mention her name in an evil, scandalous context? No. And it is exactly the no that he didn't do that changed her. That changed her. You see, changing people is one of the most difficult exercises in the world. The easiest is to bomb them, to kill them, to terminate them, to curse them, to make dua against them. The most difficult is to be patient and not to mention them and to be grateful and to make dua that Allah might guide them. This is what the Prophet ﷺ did, and you know that. So Yusuf didn't do anything. And it is that tolerance that changed that woman. Not only that woman, but even the rest of the women. Yusuf actually was responsible for the change of a group of women. I don't know how many women were present in the palace cutting their hand. That was ages ago when they cut their hand. But things have changed. Now they are saying, no, he was a good person. He was a so decent person. We couldn't even seduce a bit of him. And it is this decency that I've been talking to you about. Women respect decent men. And the king said, bring him to me that I may choose him specially for myself. Then when he spoke to him, he said, certainly today you are with us high in rank and fully trusted. Yusuf said, set me over the storehouses of the land. I will indeed guard them with full knowledge. And thus we give full authority to Yusuf in the land. Not just in the prison, not just in the palace, not just in the well. Yusuf is in charge now of the entirety of Egypt, where he might live wherever he wished. They say that Yusuf in Egypt can go to the east and the west, up and down the country. He can settle here and buy a house here and buy a villa here. He can settle here. Egypt! Brothers and sisters, Egypt became under his control, total control. That's now a new kind of test. He owns all the women in Egypt. He can get married to the most beautiful. He can wage an army against his brothers. He can do all sorts of evil things. He can go and wage a war into the nearby country and spread Islam by saying, Allahu Akbar. He can do all that. But no, he became part and parcel of the policy now that he drew when he was in prison, and now he assumed responsibility to implement it. And thus we give full authority to Yusuf in the land, where he might live wherever he wished. We bestow our mercy on whom we please, and we don't waste the reward of the righteous. Indeed, O Allah, you don't. And surely the reward of the hereafter is better for those who believe and fear Allah. And I will end it just by saying, have you noticed a change in the king's discourse? Initially he was saying, bring him to me, because he was 50% impressed as a result of the interpretation of dreams. Now he says, the second time, bring him to me and make him special to me only. I want him to be for me only. You know why? Because now he learned that Yusuf is innocent. Now he learned that Yusuf is not a womanizer as I thought through the gossip magazine and media. Now I can entrust him, because not only is he intelligent, but he is upright and decent. Not only is he religious between him and God, but he has also akhlaq and moral connection with the people. Let me conclude with the prison then, the remarks. Number one, prison provided Yusuf with an appropriate platform to speak about his beliefs in contrast to his attitude in the palace. Number two, his social interactions with the prisoners was not pretentious or fake, but stemmed from a genuinely warm social behavior. Three, it's this sincerity that made him such a likable, beloved character by Muslims, such as his father, and non-Muslims, that included criminals in prison. Four, it's important that a community is made aware by your skills and talents, for them then to trust and respect you. Five, calling to Islam, provided the time is right, should be clear and straightforward. The focus should be on the bases and pillars of belief, not on the branches or disputed matters. Six, invitation to Islam is based on dialogue and conversing in a way that is comprehensible and interesting to the listener, not on coercion or the use of violence. Seven, searching for common grounds is a powerful mechanism of influence in conversations and arguments. 8, ultimately the real challenge is to pitch your discourse, to strike a chord with the audience. One way would be to show that your discourse is relevant to their everyday concerns, and that your understandings, visions and talents are able to provide comfort and relief for their agonies. 10, invitation to Islam is a principle of attitude regardless of the results. 10, provision of services should be a principle of good citizenry and should be devoid of putting conditions in return. 11, Muslims should aim to motivate human beings despite their beliefs to channel their energies in constructive directions. Number 12, a consistent, sensible and confident personality is a powerful one that has impacts on others in different ways. This point is in relation to the power of Yusuf's personality, because he is in charge. When the king says, you come, he doesn't come. When the boys ask him to interpret the dreams, he doesn't do it immediately. He is in charge. He says, I will talk to you about Islam first and then I will interpret the dreams. We are talking about a helpful person, but not a naive person. A person who has got a vision and he is in charge of the situation. And this is the real source of power and attraction and charisma and presence in Yusuf's character. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعه بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. Brothers and sisters, I have good news for you. Now it's reunion. Now for the first time, Yusuf, after all these years, have one small mission to achieve. He changed the women. He changed the community's life. He might not have changed their religion, but he has certainly made their lives easier. But now he has got his brothers. And this is the beauty of this narrative, that we begin the chapter with a scene that describes jealousy and hatred. We end it with the same players, the same family, the same household. But things have changed now. Age, grey hair, maturity, more experience. But it was deeper than that. And we will see this element of reunion manifested before the eyes of Yusuf, but in a very sophisticated, complicated, intelligent way. Yusuf, in power and in charge of public affairs, was another context that provided him with the opportunity to reunite with his family after decades of absence. This is the scene where we now see the not any longer silent Yusuf interacting with his brothers. His new position in power, like all the different tests before, did not affect his consistency and well-established manners. Yusuf was eager to reunite his family because he believed in the importance of family bond, and in doing that he was prepared to forgive and forget past traumatic experiences. Again, his patience and his forgiveness had an impact on all his 10 brothers, who had now repented, and some say later chosen by Allah to become prophets. So how does he do this? How does he establish and achieve this change? And Yusuf's brethren came and they entered to him, and Yusuf recognized them, but they remained unaware of him. And when he got ready their bags, he said, "Bring me a brother of yours from your father. Don't you see that I give full measure and I'm the best of the hosts? But if you don't bring him to me, there will be no measure for you, nor shall you come near me." They said, "We shall try to get permission from his father, and we will certainly do it." And Yusuf said to his servants, "Put their money in their bags so that they might recognize it when they go back home, in the hope that they might come again." Now, what are we encountering? For the first time we encounter this meeting between brothers of Yusuf and Yusuf, but in a totally different context. It's so different that they can't even recognize him. What is it that made him unable to recognize him? You immediately say, well, it has been ages since they have seen him. And he was quite young, so when he grew up, he changed. Now, you tell us that when he was seduced, he was at the age of 40. Another like 15 years, maybe he's 50 now. Last time they saw him, he was 12. Fine. Okay, that's a good point. But perhaps I introduce you to another point. People don't necessarily change a lot when they grow up. I'm sure you have photos of yourselves when you were young. I have photos of myself when I was young. Imagine I was young. Yes, I was young. Small baby. And then at the age of 2, at the age of 3, at the age of 4. When you look at these photos of yours, you don't necessarily see a radical change. So it's not just about the looks, but it's about where you are now. So for example, if the brothers of Yusuf perhaps met Yusuf in a different context, if they met him somewhere in Palestine, and he was doing nothing, he was like them, the context could create some sort of a correlation whereby the memory could make this connection, that this looks like Yusuf. He is in Palestine, it's certainly Yusuf. If they met Yusuf in Canada, it's impossible that he went to Canada. They are meeting the Prime Minister of Egypt. The last time they saw Yusuf at the age of 12, they were planning for him to become a slave. So if you ask them at that time, where is Yusuf? They will either tell you he is dead or he is a slave. So that does not therefore help them to make a connection that this is Yusuf, if Yusuf is not neither dead or a slave, but is a prime minister. The position of Yusuf makes it impossible to make any connection with the past. You know what this tells us also? It links with what I was telling you, that Yusuf have progressed so fast that now through this ladder of social mobilization, he is not anymore a slave, but he is the Prime Minister of Egypt. And that links with what I was telling you, that he had no time to think about sexual desires and women. Because if he had been thinking about that, he would have remained a slave. A slave, not necessarily for this woman, but a slave of his own desires. The moment that he emancipated, freed himself, freed his soul, he could now then fly from prison to the palace, to the kingdom of Egypt. While the brothers, he could recognize them, not only because they were old when he left them, but also because they didn't change. They are still working in BT. They are still working in the cinema. They still have a fish and chip shop. They haven't changed. They are still in Palestine. They are still 10. They are still jealous. They still hate the other. They haven't changed. They haven't progressed. What am I telling you? I am begging you that when we meet after 20 years, try to surprise me. Try to shock me. Try to show me that you became the Prime Minister. Try to show that you have progressed since we met. Now you are working as a manager. I don't want to ask you and tell you, what are you doing? You say, I am in the same job 20 years ago. Fine, not a problem. Do you like it? I don't want you to tell me, it's all right, gets me paying the bills. I don't want that. You are not for a job to pay the bills. Allah did not create us to pay bills. Allah created us to progress and to enjoy our work and to enjoy our marriage life and to enjoy our life. Don't be like the brothers of Yusuf, static, just begging on pension, because that's what they were doing. They were after food. Be like Yusuf, give, provide, produce, cultivate, engage, be busy, go to the gym, build some muscles, don't take steroids. Do something that is constructive and positive, so that when I see you in the future, you have the same nose, you've lost a bit of hair, not a problem. I can still recognize you. But what I can't recognize in you, you will shock me through your achievement. You've written a book, you work as a professor. You do this, you do that. Don't tell me I got married and I divorced. Don't tell me I have a child, now he's a drug addict. No, this is not the kind of change I'm talking about. I'm talking about positive change, positive progress. When he saw them and he recognized them, in this context that I've explained, he said to them, and he, of course, the Quran doesn't tell us that, but it seems that they had a chat, and he realized, he said, by the way, how are you, what are you doing, where are you coming from? He knows everything. They are my brothers. You are the one who slapped me. Why did you slap me in the well? No, he kept silent. And that's important. Patience, self-control. Don't overreact. He knew that they have a brother. I didn't tell you this from the beginning. Yaqub was married to more than one wife. One of them is the one that brought the 10 brothers. Yusuf and Benjamin or Binyamin or the other brother that the brother said Yusuf and his brother is more beloved, are from another mother, another wife. That's why Yusuf says, I want the brother who is from your father, not from the same mother. Because he knows now that the mother, they are the 10. They have no other, but they have a brother who is from another mother. He said, I want you to bring him. Why did he ask for that? You see, he needed a pretext, he needed a justification. Yusuf, in the context of famine, through his saving and through his non-conspicuous expenditure, was able even to rescue neighboring countries and to provide grain for the nearby countries. And the nearby countries included Palestine. So the brothers came from the famine that have the 7 lean cows. This was famine that have actually struck Egypt, Palestine, Jordan, all the nearby territories. So those brothers came for grain. And they were sent by their father Yaqub, who said to them, go to Egypt, there is a just king. Brother Yaqub, this just king is your son, Yusuf, that told you one day he saw the sun and the moon prostrating. O companions, go to Abyssinia, there is a just king. And that just king, very just king, became a Muslim. History repeats itself. So go to Egypt, there is a just king. So they went But of course they left the other brother. Yusuf gives for each adult a sack of grain. They said, O king, O Aziz of Egypt, we have another brother and we have our entire family, our wives and children. By that time they were all married and had children. So we want an extra sack. He said, no, I don't give sacks like this. He said, how do I know that you have a brother or not? You might be merchants who want sacks to sell them in famine and make money out of them. Next time, you bring your brother with you. And if you don't bring your brother with you, I will know that you are liars. And indeed you are merchants. And you are not genuine brothers. So don't come again without your brother. He wants the brother. He could have kidnapped the 10 brothers, throw them in prison, strangled them and said, give me the address, where do you live in Palestine? Sent an army boat. No. Subhanallah, the entire story is devoid of violence because that was the context in which Rasulullah was in Mecca. Wait, plot, think, plan. Go to Bayat al-Aqaba, speak to the Ansar. Go to At-Ta'if, try. Don't make dua against Abu Lahab, the destruction. Be peaceful, be quiet. Meet in Dar al-Arqam, Nabi al-Arqam. It was all conducive to a peaceful context. Use the brain, don't use the muscles. Speak with her, don't beat her, don't slap her. Speak and converse with your children, don't kick them. Yusuf teaches us that. You can get what you want, but it needs time, and it needs patience, and it needs intelligence. So they went back. Now the curtain shuts and opens very quickly. We have actually 5 scenes. The first scene is in Egypt. The second scene is in Palestine. The third scene is in Egypt. The fourth scene is in Palestine. The fifth scene is in Egypt. What is Yusuf doing? He's making them travel back and forth. Do you know what he's doing? He is teaching them a lesson. He is hassling them. He's making life hell to them. He will forgive them at the end. He will forgive them. But he needs to make a point. You made me live in pain. Just suffer a little bit, so that when I tell you I am Yusuf, I say it to you in that context of pain, that you appreciate me more and how I reached that level. He could have said from the first scene, you are my brothers, I'm Yusuf. It wouldn't have worked. You need time for people to change. In the same way that the woman changed. After 7 years, she changed. The group of women cutting their hand, they changed. But all in all, they changed after a period of time. So when they returned to their father, they said, "Oh father, no more measure of grain shall we get. So send our brother with us, and we shall get our measure, and we will surely guard him." He said, "Can I trust you about him? Likewise, I trusted you before about his brother, but Allah is the best to guard, and He is the most merciful of those who show mercy." Of course, you have the verses, and I'm not going to read them all, but all in all, reluctantly now, the father is conceding and giving in to the brother's demands. At that stage, he couldn't say no, actually, because there is famine, and they told him, look, he didn't give us a sack of grain, so we are a sack of grain short of food. We are going to die, basically. We have wives, we have children, we have responsibilities, we have your beloved son. He's not going to give us any sacks. So the father now is between two pressures, between the pressure of giving them Binyamin in the same way that he gave Yusuf before, knowing that they hate his guts, and between being in famine, hunger that could then lead to death. And as a warm-hearted, soft-hearted prophet, he conceded and said, okay, you take him, but you take good care of him. Don't this business of wolves and eating, and no. You swear by the name of Allah that you will return him peacefully. And they took him. And when they went to Yusuf, now the Quran doesn't tell us they drove, they took the camel. It's about 7 nights from Palestine. They stayed in hotels, bed and breakfast. They were sweating, but really you can tell, when they enter into Yusuf, I am imagining, and Yusuf is sitting and watching and smiling. You came from Palestine, huh? Okay, now let's play games. And they went to Yusuf. He took his brother to himself and said, I am your brother. Do not grieve of what they used to do. This is now the first glimpse of the reunion. Binyamin is the first person in the family now to know that this person, this king sitting on the throne, is his own brother. Not the rest, not the rest. It's not time yet. You need to cook it well. And the story goes on. What he did, Yusuf, was that he wanted to retain and keep his brother. And the trick was that he would put the cup of the king, that the king uses to put grains in the sacks, in the sack of his brother, Binyamin, and then accuse Binyamin for public consumption that Binyamin is a thief, so as to retain him. The cup is a massive golden cup, so he puts it in the stack of his brother. And then he puts grain and everything, and ma'as salama, go home, may Allah bless. And then when they are just leaving the checkpoint of Egypt, entering into Palestinian territory, he sends an army behind them and calls them back. Come, come. Excuse me, can you empty your pockets? Please stay on the side, and 2 hours interrogation. What's your name? Where are you coming? Where are you going? Those who encountered this will know how embarrassing it is. And imagine, did you pack your own luggage? Security questions. And they open and there is a bomb. Wallahi, I didn't put it. Oh, it's your wife. To get rid of you. One wife actually, hated her husband, called the police 999. She said, my husband is a member of Al-Qaeda. And shut the phone. That's the best thing you do if you want to don't try this at home. So he did this. He put a security risk alert in the... You liked it, huh? Don't do it. You better be careful. So he put this cup, golden cup, into the sack. Come, come. What? 10 brothers and the 11th brother. And he said, you are stealers, you are thieves. We are missing the cup of the king. They said, you know that we did not come here to steal. Yusuf said, okay, what is the punishment then of those who steal? In Egypt, those who steal get kicked. And that's okay, you get a kick or two and then go home. But in the Hebrew, in Judaism, in Hebrew, if you are a thief, you become the slave of that person that you stole from. He asked them that because he knew that if he applied his own law, the Egyptian law, it won't, the plot needs to work. He needs to retain the brother, so he needs to retain him. The Egyptian is not convenient. Switch to the Hebrew now. You have a very intelligent mind moving here. And then he begins to search. Number 10, come. You search. Okay, number 10, you can go through. Checkpoint, go to Palestine in peace. Number 9, go through. Number 8, number 5, number 4, number 2, number 1. What is this? This is the cup of the king. Now Binyamin knows. I am imagining him smiling and saying, all right, yeah, king, my brother, that's a good man. That's my brother. And he says, you can leave in peace now, but we will retain number 11. That's exactly what Yaqub does not want. And Yusuf knows that. Yusuf knows that his father could have a heart attack if they go back without the 11th. But he also knew that the good news will not have this great taste without a little bit of agony, without a little bit of masala in the... So that was the masala. I will take Binyamin for a while, and I'll call you back again, and you will appreciate me. The 10 now are divided. This is the first incident in which Yusuf is creating disorientation in the unit that is now becoming fragmented. This is the moment in which Yusuf is playing games to the 10 brothers who were playing games on his father when they said, this is the shirt, this is the blood, he's dead. Now he's playing games against them, but in a very constructive, positive way, because he wants to teach them a lesson. He doesn't want revenge. Number 10, the oldest, the senior, the one who the Mufassirin said, do not kill Yusuf, said, I'm not going home. I don't have the face to look in the eyes of my father. Can't you remember that we gave an oath? Are we going to say to him, like what we said about Yusuf, ages ago. What are we going to do? Okay, I'm going to stay in Egypt. You go, the 9 of you, you go and tell our father that this time, wallahi this time, we are saying the truth. Benjamin is a stealer. Benjamin is a thief. We did not bear witness except to that which we've seen. The CCTV, the camera, the checks, everything testified that the cup is in his sack. They went to Palestine, and now the father, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. What is the 10th? What is Benjamin? Our father. Benjamin is a thief. He's a slave now to the king that you told us that he is just. And the 10th is waiting in Egypt for your permission as to what to do. So when they went and spoke to him in Palestine, he said, your souls have made for you some excuse. So patience is good. Maybe Allah will bring them all to me. Truly, He is the all-knowing and the all-wise. And he turned away from them and said, my grief for Yusuf. Not for the 10th, not for Benjamin, for Yusuf. And he lost his sight because of the sorrow that he was suppressing. Then they said, by Allah, you will never cease remembering Yusuf until you become weak with old age or until you be of the dead. We thought that casting Yusuf from your face will make you forget Yusuf. You are doing nothing but still remembering him. He said, I only complain of my grief and sorrow to Allah, and I know from Allah that which you don't know. What is it that you know? I know I will meet him one day, but Allah didn't tell me when. I know that he is alive. I know that he is somewhere, but I don't know where. Oh my sons, look at the caring father now. They lost 2 brothers, but their relationship is still there. This is the first point, the first theme, maintaining family relations. Oh my sons, go and search for Yusuf. Oh, Yusuf again? Go and search for Benjamin, we understand. Go and search for the 10th brother, we understand. Yusuf again? We were the one who got rid of him. You want us now to search and look for him? What is it with you? I know where Benjamin is. Benjamin is a slave. He is in Egypt. I know where the 10th brother is. But Yusuf, I don't know where is he. I know that he is alive, but I don't know where is he. So go and search for him. And then it will become easy to find Benjamin and to find the 10th brother. Go and search for Yusuf and his brother, and never give up hope of Allah's mercy. Certainly no one despairs of Allah's mercy except the people who disbelieve. ابيضت عيناه من الحزن. His eyes became white. The black spot disappeared and he became blind. Out of sorrow of Yusuf. The woman continues to love Yusuf after all these years. The father thinks about nothing but Yusuf after these years. Brothers and sisters, look at this psychological reaction now. You have a father that when he thinks about the details, he cries and he sheds tears. But when he withdraws himself and looks at the general picture with capital letters says H-O-P-E. There is hope. So yes, he sheds tears. So yes, he turns blind. But the general picture is that there is hope. Hence, go and search for Yusuf. And this is our attitude. I am not saying that when someone passes away, do not cry. I'm not saying that when you hurt your knees, do not say, ouch. I'm not saying that when you fall into drugs, you better go to hell. There is no hope. I'm not saying that this prostitute person is going to die as a prostitute because she can end up saving a dog and entering for Jannah because of saving that dog. I am not saying that evil will remain evil forever and therefore we should be frustrated, panic and cry and commit suicide. If you think about the details in life, you will be heartbroken. But if you take a step backward and look at it from its generality, holistic approach, you will see that from within this frustration, there is hope. And that's exactly the Yaqubian, Jacobian, if I may call it, approach to calamities and crisis. He gives them hope. And he say, go back again. Don't go for food and for grains and for cereals and for conflicts. Go to unite and to patch up family relations. This is more important than food. But it seems that they haven't changed yet, because the wife is pressurizing him. Pressurizing number 5, number 6, number 7. The children are crying, we want conflicts. So they went back with the intention of grains again, not with the intention of Yusuf. They said, okay, father, don't worry, inshallah, Yusuf, inshallah, we'll make dua, but we are going for grains as well. They were still connected to the material life. So they went to Yusuf. So they entered to him and said, O ruler of the land. Now the discourse have changed. They are more humble, more humiliated. Look at them now saying what? A hard time has hit us. Our father turned blind. We are losing food. We are going to die. And our family. And we have brought but worthless capital. Yusuf would give you sacks of grain in return for something from Palestine. Initially they brought something that was worthwhile. Now there is nothing. Mufassirin say they had nothing to bring. They just had old things to give. They had old robes to give to the king. Some say they had fake dirhams, fake money to give. They had nothing. And that's why they said, and we have brought but worthless capital. But please, please, pay us full measure and be charitable to us. Truly, Allah rewards the charitable. Now imagine Yusuf, the merciful, listening to that. Wallahi, brothers and sisters, I cannot express it, but in the Arabic it makes a total difference. قالوا يا أيها العزيز مسنا وأهلنا الضر وجئنا ببضاعة مزجاة فأوفي لنا الكيل وتصدق علينا. I am imagining them all in tears, all of them wearing second-hand t-shirts, all of them, their shirts are torn, sweating, smelling. You can see dust all over their face, humiliated. The king sitting on his throne, air conditioning, well perfumed, well fed, sees his own brothers. What does he say? Now it's the time. He said, do you know what you did with Yusuf and his brother when you were ignorant? Now it's the time to reveal the truth. And imagine, after they weep and prostrate and say, Your Majesty, give us anything. And the king now says, in Hebrew, do you remember what you did with Yusuf? And now they make the connection. Now they make the connection and say, that, you are Yusuf? You are Yusuf? Because no one was with them in the well except Yusuf. So the king was not with them. We were in Palestine, not in Egypt. إِنَّكَ لَأَنْتَ Yusuf. The 10 of them speaking in one voice. Number 5 and number 4. Everyone, إِنَّكَ لَأَنْتَ. قَالَ أَنَا يُوسُف وَهَذَا أَخِي. He's not a thief. He's not a stealer. Verily, he who fears Allah and be patient, then Allah does not waste the reward of the righteous. You know how I became here? Because I feared Allah. I studied hard. I worked hard. I said no to temptation. I said no to palace life. I favored my place in prison. Wallahi, I never hated you when you threw me in the well. Wallahi, you benefited me. If you did not throw me, I would not have gone to Egypt. I have made use of every situation that I have relived and adapted to it. I was patient, never complaining, saying always, Alhamdulillah. And it is this kind of discourse that changed the 10. It didn't change the 2 and the other 8 said, let's think about it. It didn't change 5, 6, 7. 10 people accepted Shahada. No, they were Muslims. But now they can understand and relate to Yusuf. Now they are good people. Now they repented. They said, by Allah, indeed Allah has preferred you above us. Now they can appreciate the progress. Now, after all this hardship, traveling here and there, Allah has preferred you above us, and we certainly have been sinners. Now the confession. You remember the woman when she confessed? I was a sinner. Now the brothers are confessing. Yusuf is dragging everyone to confession. Dragging them by force, by violence, by bombing? No. By plots, by intelligence, by playing halal games on them. Did they apologize? No, they didn't. Did he forgive them? Yes, he did. He said, no reproach on you today. May Allah forgive you. And He is the most merciful of those who show mercy. I understand that when you ask forgiveness, I say, I forgive you. I understand that, that's normal. But what is really, really abnormal is that I say to you, brother, I forgive you. And you say to me, but I haven't asked for forgiveness. That's the beauty of it. I forgive you before you ask for forgiveness. We are talking about a highly exalted, upright and moral person that does not want to score points, that he wants to punish, humiliate them. And he could have said to them, number 5, I remember you were smacking me. Number 6, you remember you used to take my toys and break them. Number 8, how on earth when I called you from the darkness of the well and said, Shimon, Rabin, come back, rescue me, you left me? No, he is in a position of power. He could say to them, take them, throw them in prison just for a couple of days to make them taste the darkness and the loneliness that I've been. Take their shirts and throw them half naked in the same well that they threw me in. No, no. I'm not here to revenge. I'm here to teach lessons. I want people to understand and to change positively and through peaceful means. And he says to them, لا تثريب عليكم اليوم يغفر الله لكم وهو أرحم الراحمين. There is no reproach. I'm not going to blame you. Let me stop and pause and take you to Sirah now. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he conquered Mecca, Abu Sufyan wanted to go and approach the Prophet and say to him, we apologize, we might want to consider becoming Muslims, but he was afraid. So he was going forward, backward, because he did many bad things. I mean, his wife Hind, and we spoke about change in the women inspired by the beloved. I spoke about the life of Hind, turning points, how when women change from being corrupt to good, how she can create wonders. Hind ate, she was a cannibal, killing and raw kidney of Hamza. How can a woman do that? Yes, women can do that. Women are feminine, and that's only when they like it. But they can kill you if they hate you. Don't make them upset. They can. That's what Hind was doing. But when she changed, she became an angel walking on earth. So Abu Sufyan comes to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and says, Abu Sufyan, one backward, 1 foot backward, forward, and then he sees Al-Abbas, the uncle. So Al-Abbas says to Abu Sufyan, where are you heading? He says, I want to speak to Muhammad. I want to converse with him. Maybe I will become a Muslim. But I am worried that he might hate me, slap me, kill me because of the ill things I did. You study the history of Abu Sufyan. Not a single battle. Badr, he was behind it. Uhud, he was behind it. He was behind the major battles, the orchestrator, the mass media, the provocator. Al-Abbas said to him, you know what? When you enter, say to him, by Allah, indeed Allah has preferred you above us, and we certainly have been sinners. Just say to him this verse. What does it mean? Just say to him this, and don't worry, you will be fine. You will be okay. Abu Sufyan enters, and Rasul sallam is shocked and upset. ماذا جاء بك يا أبو سفيان? Abu Sufyan, what are you doing here? He said to him, Tallahi, laqad atharaka Allah. He's memorizing his script. تالله لقد آثرك الله علينا وإن كنا لخاطئين. Rasul sallam puts his head. Can't. Rasul sallam, you give a verse to him, he would not say, oh, but this was revealed about Yusuf. No, this is عرف من قبلنا. This is only at Yusuf's time. Muhammad with another sharia. No. لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله. If we were to reveal this Quran on the mountains, it will crumble out of khushu' and silence. So Rasul sallam was this mountain. He put his head and raised it up again and looked in the eyes of Abu Sufyan, eye-to-eye communication, and said, no reproach on you today. May Allah forgive you. And He is the most merciful of those who show mercy. لا تثريب عليكم اليوم يغفر الله لكم وهو أرحم الراحمين. Abu Sufyan went out. Abbas said, did it work? Yes. Alhamdulillah, he forgave us. Now I can become a Muslim. And a new page began. We close the seerah, go back to Yusuf. So he patched up and they reconciled. He said, now go Palestine again. I want your father. I want the parents to come. But now, Yusuf, you don't know I got married. I have children. Oh, mashallah, how many do you have? I have 10, 15. Number 5, oh, Yusuf, I got married, alhamdulillah. I have 3 daughters and 5 sons. Bring them to Egypt. They say, the Mufassirin, that the family of Yaqub were over 70 members. The 10 brothers got married, wives and children. Bring them all to Egypt. Bring them all. I'll give them a visa to come to Egypt. Immigrants, come. I'll find them a job. I'll find them employment. Bring them. They say that he sent 200 camels by way of transport to go and collect them. And they went, and he said to them, the third now, mention of the shirt. The shirt, subhanAllah, plays a role now. He says, take this shirt and throw it gently on the face of my father, and he will see again. The shirt that was brought in the context of misery and sadness and lie and jealousy and malice at the beginning of the chapter stands now to a positive context. Good news, glad tidings. That's why ahsan al-qasas. That's why a happy ending. I want to tell you something. The best thing in life is to reunite with your family. And when I say family, I'm not just talking about the vertical, nuclear family. I know that in this society we care about our wives, our children, but there is the horizontal extension. There is the auntie and the uncle and the baiji and all the G's in the world. There is an extended family. You progress. Don't be like the brothers of Yusuf going just for the conflicts. Go for your father. Go for your mother. Think about your sister-in-law. Think about your sibling. Think about your nephew. Be broad-minded. Think in extended terms, not in vertical terms. Family reunion, brothers and sisters, is the most important. That even the joy of the mu'min is incomplete in Jannah without his family. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَاتَّبَعَتْهُمْ ذُرِّيَّتُهُمْ بِإِيمَانٍ أَلْحَقْنَا بِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ. Those mu'mins, in the day of judgment, when they go to Jannah and their offsprings are mu'min, we will say, go and stay in the same house, in the same palace as your father and mother, as if the enjoyment of Jannah is incomplete without my son and my daughter that I used to care for in this dunya, or my sun and moon, my father and mother. So the brothers bring shirt to father, and when the caravan departed, their father said, he can't see, but he can smell. I certainly find the scent of Yusuf, if only you think me not a dotard or crazy or an old man. They said, who they? The shirt hasn't arrived yet, but who's they? The grandsons, the 18, 19 years old boys now. 3rd generation. Yaqub saw them. At that time, Yaqub was 89. Some say 100. Talking to 15 years old boy, but still communicating. But they are more disrespectful than their fathers toward their grandfather. By Allah, certainly you are infatuated with the same old love. You're still remembering Yusuf is dead. They are saying this because they have never seen their uncle. They were born and brought up while Yusuf was absent. So when they grow up, father, do we have an uncle called Yusuf? Because apparently grandfather, grandpa, Uncle G, whenever we sit with him, he say, Yusuf, 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 Yusuf. Yes, my son, we had a brother, good looking, called Yusuf. We actually killed him. Whoops, no, he disappeared. Oh, so he's dead now. Father, yes, he's dead long time ago. So why on earth is grandfather saying, I can smell the scent of Yusuf? They say that he could smell the scent of Yusuf from 7 days and 7 nights distance. That is true love. You know, I read your emails before you email me. Didn't I say to you, I know from Allah that which you don't know? They said, our father. Now they came, they throw, and he opened. Now he can see. He can see the 15 years old with the iPod, and he can see all of them now. He can see after years of absence of sight. And he is so happy. Now we are talking about happiness. He said, our father, ask for forgiveness for our sins. Indeed, we are sinful. Why did they ask forgiveness from the father and not from the brother? Well, some of us say, well, because Yusuf already forgiven them. Some say because Yusuf is a younger brother and they felt arrogant asking for forgiveness, but you'd usually ask for forgiveness for your father. Some say because they were of great pain to the father, they made him lose his eyesight. Yusuf is doing all right and fine and okay. But at least our father, look at him, he's getting old and blind. So we might as well ask for forgiveness. He said, I will ask my Lord to forgive you. Verily, He is oft forgiving, the most merciful. Why did He say, I will ask? Why didn't He say, I will forgive? Some say, because He was upset. Some say, because He was waiting for the right moment to ask for forgiveness during Tahajjud and Qiyam al-Layl, because Allah answers the prayers more. So He was waiting for the right moment and saying, no worries, I will ask for forgiveness, but wait a little bit. Then when they came in before Yusuf, he took his parents to himself and said, enter Egypt if Allah wills in security. And he raised his parents to the throne, and all fell down prostrating for him. And he said, my father, do you remember? Do you remember when I was 12? Do you remember when I woke up early in the morning, squeezing my eyes and saying, my father, I'm confused. I saw the sun and the moon prostrating. Do you remember, my father? This is the interpretation of my first dream. My Lord has made it come true. He was indeed good to me. When He took me out of the prison, He didn't say the well, because He forgave now. When you forgive, don't mention it. And He brought you out of the Bedouin life, merely stated fact. He didn't say, brought you unemployed immigrants. No, you came from the Bedouin life to a more civilized urban life. After Shaitan had sworn enmity between me and my brothers, certainly my Lord is the most kind to whom He wills. Verily, He is all-knowing, all-wise. Allah is always mentioned by Yusuf. In any context, Allah is mentioned. And the Shaitan, you remember, my father, when you advised me not against my brothers? They did what they did when they were ignorant. They were young and fool. Now they've changed and matured. But it was the Shaitan that you warned me against. And indeed the Shaitan is the one that's sworn enemy. In these verses they say that Yusuf, when he received his father, he came out from his throne, went to the borders between Egypt and Palestine with bodyguards, police, the government. Everyone came because he's the king. They say about 40,000 army round Yusuf. Imagine that boy that was, open your mouth, show me your ears, stand up, sit down, turn back. Now, he goes out, 4,000 in his protection. And imagine this moment of emotion. He embraces his father. Mufassirin say kisses and tears. "Oh, Yusuf, you've changed. You're still beautiful as your mother?" Because they say he inherited beauty from Sarah. "MashaAllah, look at you. How old are you now?" And imagine the kind of conversation that will take place between a son and a father after absence of 40 years. He takes him, and the throne is the highest thing in the palace. Everyone is low. He puts him on the same level because this is his father. And brothers and sisters, be proud of your father. Be proud of your mother. Put them always on the highest level. You might not have a throne, but certainly you have a throne in your heart. You have a throne in your house. You have a throne in your bank account. Put them on the highest level. Treat them well, like they used to treat you well when you were wearing nappies and smelling. Be tolerant to them. They might act funny, but you were also acting funny when you were a baby. You were breaking the glass, you were breaking the house, you were urinating on their father's clothes, you were doing all sorts of rubbish, naughty things. They tolerated you, they cleaned you, washed you. Now it's time to repay them. And however much you repay, you will not be able to do 10% of what they did to you. So Yusuf could bring his father on his throne. And then, in the midst of this partying, in the midst of this joy and cutting the cakes and distributing the drinks and everyone is speaking and talking, Yusuf again withdraws himself. In the same way that he withdrew himself when the women were seducing. Withdrew himself from the midst of that joy to connect with who? To connect with who? To check his text messaging? To check his email? Connect with Allah. My Lord. Imagine they are giggling at the next room, laughing. Yaqub is looking at Egypt, what a wonderful place. Binyamin is happy, a new country, new house. Alhamdulillah, my brothers have changed. They've changed, the brothers repented. Everyone is good, everyone is nice. All, the women, the king, the prisoners, everyone changed. Yusuf in a small little room, whispering to Allah. No cameras, no 4,000 bodyguards. My Lord, you have bestowed on me a kingdom and taught me something of the interpretation of dreams. Something. Look at this modesty and humbleness. The creator of the heavens and the earth. You are my helper in this world and in the hereafter. Make me die as a Muslim. Is that what you're thinking about? I think it's time to think about death now. No power, no women, no wives, no children, no brothers, no loving father. Now I'm too old. Now I want to die in peace as a Muslim. I've reformed the country. I've changed the women. I've changed my brothers. I did what I was expected and hoping to do. Now, oh Allah, if it's time for me to die, at least I want to die as a Muslim. And oh Allah, وَأَلْحِقْنِي بِالصَّالِحِينَ, and join me with the righteous. He didn't say, I am the righteous. Al-Hiqni, the righteous are there. Oh Allah, just pick me up and throw me with them. I want to be with them, with the righteous. And here we have a happy ending. Let me read what I wrote under reunion. 1. Yusuf had progressed since he left his hometown in Palestine, and that was one reason his brothers couldn't recognize him. 2. It is his active engagement and lofty aspirations which made him stand against temptations and maintain continuous progress. 3. The brothers, who had always been negative in their way of thinking, didn't change much since, even on the level of their feelings towards Yusuf. 4. Focus, concentration, and self-control against intended or unintended provocations are important elements in the success of a well-planned vision. Yusuf didn't lose his temper when he was provoked by the false accusations of his brothers that he was a stealer. 5. However much there is family breakdown, there will always be hope it could reunite. Yaqub had great hope that Yusuf was still alive and that his sons could one day find him. 6. Avoiding reproach is one way to patch family severed relations. Do not reproach. Do not say, why did you do this? Why did you do that? It's easy to do that. Just forget it and forgive and learn to forgive. It's even constructive for your own energy. The more critical you are destroying yourself. You develop what's called negative energy. 7. Connection with Allah is what cements family relations. Yusuf is connected with Allah now. Yaqub is connected with Allah now. The brothers are connected with Allah now. And it is through this connection with Allah that the family become connected with themselves. I just want to finish off the components or the elements that we can say constituted the making of Yusuf's character. And more or less, I will not say anything new from what you've heard, except trying to make a link now in verses that are spread throughout, but make some sort of a coherent link, like a jigsaw puzzle, in creating a particular component that can then make us appreciate the character of Yusuf. The first element is charisma. Yusuf alayhi salam was a charismatic personality. And I've explained perhaps in the themes during this course that charisma has nothing to do with looks. Hitler was not necessarily good looking, but he was charismatic. Gandhi, Malcolm X, Martin Luther, Mandela, Ahmed ibn Hanbal, Bukhari, Abu Hanifa, Salah ad-Din, these were people of charisma. These were people that were not mass media celebrities. These were not necessarily muscular, hunky type of men, but they changed the course of history because they had an aura, presence. That is a gift. Some of it is a talent, some of it is a skill that you develop, but some of it is in your gene. Some of it is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whoever interacted with Yusuf changed. Whoever interacted with Yusuf was disoriented. His father was in love with him. The travelers, the moment they saw him, Ya Bushra, hada ghulam. What a good news. This is a boy. The Al-Aziz immediately came up with this decision that we will take him as a son. The wife of Al-Aziz could not control herself, shutting the doors and seducing him on a continuous basis. So much so that she had no problem scandalizing herself in front of a women gossip community and saying, this is the person that you reproached me for, and if he does not do what he is told, I will throw him in prison. She's becoming wild now. Even the women that saw him did not say, wow, what an exciting man. His presence made them utter different words. What a noble angel. They didn't say angel so that you don't think it's about beauty, but it's about nobility. He's a noble and happens to be good looking, but with dignity, decency, and nobility. The prisoners, verily, we see you righteous. Inna naraka min al-muhsinin. What is ihsan? What is a muhsin? Someone who's blonde, someone who's black, someone who's white, someone who's a Caucasian, Indian, Asian. It has nothing to do with the looks. It's how you behave and how you conduct yourself. The brothers, verily, we now understand. We now know why Allah favored you upon us. We were mistaken. We thought that it was just a love affair between you and our father. No, it's deeper than that. The creator of the entire world loves you and favors you. Look at you. Look at where you are now. You move east and west. You feed Palestine and Jordan and Syria. Amazing charisma. So, what's the point? The point is that you should think about creating an impact in your surrounding, and part of it is to have charisma. This is a contradiction, because when I say it's gifted, how can you have it if you are not gifted? But we don't know whether you have charisma or not unless you try. And maybe all of you are charismatic. Not necessarily being good speakers. You can be good mothers, good fathers, good accountants, good students, good human beings. Your charisma might not necessarily change everyone, but it could change those who are closer to you, and that's enough charisma. Number 2, determination, discipline, purpose, enthusiasm, motivation, commitment, vision. He knew how to seize an opportunity. They say an opportunity does not come to you, but it passes you. If you don't grab it, it will go to the one next to you. If he doesn't grab it, it will go to... And you might be called Muhammad. You don't grab it, it will not stop and say, Muhammad, take me, you are a Muslim. Mark grabs it, he will grab it. He will have an industrial revolution. He will have a modern state. He will have civilization. He will have nuclear weapons. Why? Because he grabbed the opportunity. Yusuf was determined, and Yusuf grabbed the opportunity. When he was taken as a slave, he didn't resist the travelers. He didn't cry and say, leave me alone. He saw traveling as an opportunity. Look at the opportunity now passing. There is an opportunity that you go to Egypt. If you resist, you will not go to Egypt, you will not grab the opportunity, you will not go to prison, you will not interpret the dreams, you will never become a king. There is an opportunity. When the 2 young men approached him in prison and asked him to interpret their dreams, he seized the opportunity and spoke to them about Islam. There is an opportunity now. You grab it, you speak to them about Islam, or you say, you are kuffar. I will not interpret the dream. They will go to a communist, they will go to an atheist, who might then interpret the dreams, and they will become communists. He grabs the opportunity. He grabs the souls and the hearts of the people. When he learned that one of them will be released, he said, mention me to your king. He's going to leave tomorrow. You grab the opportunity. The moment he leaves, tell him to remind the king. Yes, he might forget, but he will remember, even if after 7 years. When the king sent for his release, he seized the opportunity to re-initiate a serious inquiry into his case in order to prove his innocence. He could have left the prison and said, okay, I will go and assume a job, control the media, and then go and jail this woman. No, before I leave, before I step into the White House, before I go and meet the Prime Minister, I need to be established as an innocent person. Only in this context will I leave. And the opportunity came for him to initiate the inquiry, and he grabbed it. He seized trust of the king to ask that he becomes in charge of the treasury. The king wanted him to work under him as a consultant, as someone giving him an opinion whenever he uses it, whenever he needs it. No, I'm not a consultant. I can be your boss. I can be your manager. اجعلني على خزائن الأرض إني حفيظ عليم. He grabbed the opportunity when he felt that he grabbed the soul and the heart of the king. The third element, we are talking about a balanced character. A character that does not overreact. A character that does not change prior 9/11, post 9/11. A character that does not change according to the change of weather. A character that does not get hyped up and then withers and dies away. A balanced character, a character that is firm and has a vision and does not overreact or get provoked. When seduced by the woman, he didn't comply. Neither was he harsh or rude. He didn't swear at her. But he only said, may Allah forbid. He is balanced even when he rejects something. When he was accused by her, he did not keep quiet. And at the other end, neither did he speak abusively, but he was polite and brief. It was she that seduced me. He could have said, oh, you liar! Look at the shirt! Who did this? He could have said this. And the husband would have understood and appreciated, and there was perhaps no need for a witness. But he was quiet. Not passively quiet and turning the other cheek, but just said, hiya rawadatni an nafsi. And it's up to you now to check. Be cool, be calm, be balanced. When asked by the two prisoners to interpret the dreams, he did not ask for a charge or a fee. Neither did he interpret for no return, for free, totally free, but charged that they listen to him speaking about Allah. So on the one hand, he was not selling, commercializing his talent. But at the same time, he wasn't just, yes, next, interpretation of dream. I saw an apple. An apple, that means you will die. I saw a banana. Banana means, inshallah, you will be released. No, he wasn't doing that. He was in charge and in control. He was saying, I will interpret the dream free of charge, but you need to listen first to what I have to say, and when I am done, I will interpret the dream. Balanced. When the saved one was released, Yusuf did not neglect him. Neither did he humiliate himself to him, but articulated his request with dignity. Mention me to your Lord. And that was it. Please mention me. You won't forget, won't you? Write it down. That's my email address. Please, call me at least for an interview. I'll fill an application form. Why didn't you come? No. With dignity. He grabbed the opportunity again. Charisma, enthusiasm, determination. But when he grabbed it with dignity, briefity, decency. In the same way that he said, hiya rawadatni an nafsi. Constructive. When that person came again and asked about the interpretation of the king's dream, Yusuf didn't reproach him, neglect him, or even asked him to mention him to his Lord again, but offered his interpretation directly. He didn't reproach his brothers. He didn't get fussy about details. He was more interested in the generality. And that's how you can become constructive. Always build, don't destroy. Criticism is a form of destruction. Have this positive energy again, rather than the negative energy. The negative energy, why is this brother didn't speak me? Why did this sister didn't do this? Why this organization? Why are the Muslims? Why are this? Why are that? This is negative. How can I help? How can I contribute? I have certain talents and skills. How can I do it? How can I contribute? He is consistent. Consistency is a fourth element in the making of Yusuf. All in the narrative, all in the qissa, the story, were changing except him. That doesn't mean that he was stubborn or naive or superficial or not responding to his environment and surrounding. But in terms of the essence of his character, he had a vision, persuasion. He had deep-rooted, well-established identity that he wasn't changing. He wasn't having every day and night identity crisis. He goes and listens to the speaker, he becomes a follower and a murid of that speaker. Then he goes to another speaker, he changes and becomes the follower of that speaker. He emulates him in the accent, in the dress, and where he comes from. He went to Mauritania, I'll go for Mauritania. He goes to Yemen, I'll go to Yemen. He goes to hell, I go to hell. You can't do that. You need to be firm. I'm not saying be stubborn, but you need also to maintain an element of stability in your life. You need to do that. And that has nothing to do with you being old or young, married or unmarried, Britain or Kuwait. Has nothing to do with that. Has nothing to do with mood, whether you are feeling bad or good, whether you are rich or poor, employed or unemployed. It has to do with the core of you. That consistency, you can see it in the character of Yusuf. When he was young and old, when he was at home and abroad, he wasn't dual-faced. Yeah, my father is watching, now I'm in the well, now I'm in the palace now with this girl. Let me give da'wah for her, we might, have a nice... No! Father is here or not here. Allah is here. This is the element of consistency. When he was a layman, and when he was in power and in charge. When he was with people, or when he was in private. When he was free, or when he was a slave. When he was single, and when he was married, and he got ultimately married. when he was a prophet, when he wasn't a prophet, when he was in the well or prison or in the palace. Yusuf is Yusuf, the constant moving character in an ever-changing world. But there are other elements that we can write essays and articles and books about, and they are a lot. But I thought I would mention them very briefly. He was decent, moral, virtuous. Self-control. He suppressed his anger when his brothers accused him of stealing. Self-confidence. When he said, "Set me over the storehouse of the land." He had a strong memory and alertness. He recognized them, his brothers that is, but they didn't. He was caring. O two companions of the prison. He was forgiving. No reproach on you. May Allah forgive you. He was generous. Bring me all your family. Even if they were over 70. He was eloquent. When he spoke to him, the king was impressed. فَلَمَّا كَلَّمَهُ قَالَ إِنَّكَ الْيَوْمَ لَدَيْنَا مَكِينٌ أَمِينٌ. When he spoke to him, he said, "This day you are with us in high rank." When you sit with someone, you listen to him. Wow, he's amazing. He's eloquent. He's deep. He's intelligent. I want him to work for me. You become working under me. I am no less than a boss. اجعلني على خزائن الأرض إني حفيظ عليم. Brothers and sisters, I am happy, the happiest man on earth, because I am finished with this course, which was a torture for me. And thank you very much. You've been lovely brothers and sisters. And inshallah we meet again in future courses. But I leave you with Surah Yusuf, and I'm sure that you can generate over 2,000 lessons from Surah Yusuf, different than the lessons that we've spoke about today. قولوا قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.